I think we're ready to start. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. It's a privilege to welcome you to this special session on celebrating over 2 decades of bilateral collaboration in astronomy in South Africa and the Netherlands. So please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Alette Wit. I'm Director for Radio Astronomy Projects in South Africa's Department of Science, Technology, and Innovation. And with that, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Her Excellency, Ambassador of the Netherlands to South Africa, Ms. Joanne Donaward. I hope I said that correctly. Also, Deputy Director General for International Cooperation and Resources at our Department of Science, Technology and Innovation in South Africa, Mr. Don de Tooy. The senior officials from the DSTI, the diplomatic representatives from the Embassy of the Netherlands, the directors and key representatives from our national astronomy facilities, our distinguished panel of speakers, and of course, everyone joining us today to celebrate and reflect on this remarkable partnership. So today's session will be an opportunity to reflect on our shared achievements, celebrate the milestones of this partnership, and explore how we can continue to make a meaningful impact in the years to come. It's a celebration of collaboration, excellence, and shared vision. So we will now move on to the first segment of our program, which will give a brief overview of the history of the bilateral cooperation between South Africa and the Netherlands. And our first speaker, Mr. Don de Tooy, our Deputy Director for International Cooperation and Resources at our Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, will be our first speaker. Please welcome Mr. Don de Tooy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alette, and good morning, Ambassador and your colleagues, and my apologies for being late. I have the privilege to be overall responsible for this event, and every year my team knows I promise myself I'm not a speaker, I don't participate in any events because it's just a recipe for disaster because I'm always busy with something. But I wanted to make a point to be here this morning because this is very important for us. And what I would like to do in these brief remarks is just to reflect on the significance of the 20-year partnership between South Africa and the Netherlands. And I'm not going to go into the details of the astronomy, first of all, because I'm not an astronomer, and there are more qualified people who will speak about it later. But I've been privileged to have been involved and seen the growth of this relationship. So I will try and illustrate some of the points I'll be making with some of the anecdotes. For us, if we celebrate this 20 years of collaboration, yes, it's a celebration of collaboration in astronomy, but it's also a broader celebration of collaboration in science, technology, and innovation between our 2 countries, and indeed of the overall partnership. And I would say first, there are 3 reasons why we will celebrate. First of all, when we speak about cooperation with the Netherlands, and I think that's a bit part of the Dutch DNA. It's not talk, it's concrete. And it's a partnership which over the years have grown to be exceptionally strong at 3 different levels. First of all, at the governmental level, we have a very vibrant memorandum of understanding with our counterparts, as the DSTI, with the Ministry for Education, Culture and Science, OCW, in the Netherlands. And that has been built step by step by getting to know each other better, by trusting each other. And I think our extensive contact in astronomy played no small part in to encourage that collaboration. And indeed, over the years, the policy dialogue we've had with OCW, that's played a very important part also to shape our own policy thinking. For example, planning for large-scale research infrastructures, and indeed the actual governance of the SKA. I don't know, Patrick, or some of you will recall there was a gentleman called Jan van den Donk at the OCW several years ago, was quite instrumental in shaping the thinking on how this global SKA project should be organized. And it was really a milestone moment in 2010. I will never forget the year, because it was in the midst of the Football World Cup, which the Netherlands, of course, unfortunately didn't win, but you came close, when there was a big event in Groningen, coinciding with the official opening of LOFAR. It was a public SKA forum, which really brought all the international SKA partners together. It was at the time of the very heated bidding contest between South Africa and Australia. But I think Dutch diplomacy there played a very important role to keep this collective together and working together to achieve the vision what we have now as the SKA. But it was not only the 2 governments, also at institutional relationship. Over the years, we've seen the very strong growth between Astron and its equivalent, then the SKA project office, now the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. And I'm sure my colleague Adrian Toplady will speak about the technical advice and input from Astron has absolutely been fundamental for our success with MeerKAT. But also we've seen the growth in scientific links at multiple levels. Mobility between our two countries, and people like Professor Wout is a living example of that. So a very strong partnership at all levels, government, institution, and between the scientists, the way it should be. But secondly, when we celebrate this, is also because our collaboration are actually very focused and aligned with what we in South Africa would consider to be our national priorities. We are celebrating this year, and it's a consistent theme in this forum, 30 years of democracy. So we also reflect on the journey of science, technology, and innovation in the 30 years of democracy. And one of the choices which was deliberately made in the mid-90s, that in addition for science to respond to what South Africa's key priorities, food security, health, fighting poverty, we also need to invest in basic sciences. And we also need to invest in disciplines such as astronomy, not only because of the geographic advantage we have to our telescope, because those are inspirational disciplines, and those are disciplines which will help us to build the knowledge economy and a country and a continent which can indeed be part of the global scientific enterprise. And being able to work with a country such as the Netherlands, which has always also maintained that vision on the importance of science as an inspiration, is for us really a privilege. But we also have worked together in translating that vision, very concrete applications. And we share also the perspective that investment in astronomy is the foundation for the big data economy. And I think some years ago, when former Prime Minister Rutte was here, we actually signed an MOU trilateral with Astron, IBM, and others. So again, a concrete example. And those are explicit policy priorities for us. And the last one I would mention, because this is a topic where we have a very fruitful dialogue with Professor Jessica Dempsey at Astron, and that's how do we promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in science, and notably the Women in Science agenda. So on all those topics, we are directly aligned. But the third reason is also just, and it's certainly not the least important, I think we also, as countries, share that perspective of commitment to multilateralism, to global solidarity, and how we use science to bring people together. And our partnership has really symbolized that. We have a long history together as our two countries. There's a difficult part of it, on which I think we all acknowledge, and with Bertel we've spoken about actually some research and understanding that colonial past. But we also don't forget, and we should not forget, that there are also many in the Netherlands who played a very active part to support South Africa's struggle for freedom and democracy, activists, etc. And in the beginning of our democracy, also the Netherlands played a very critical role to support our government's development of a democratic state. And again, a personal anecdote, in those years I was in the foreign ministry, and one of the first programs I remember there was a diplomatic training program with Klingendahl, with the next generation of South African diplomats. So there's a history of strong collaboration, there's a present day solid foundation, and that really inspires us that as we celebrate this 20-year celebration, looking forward for astronomy to continue to play its part to strengthen our partnership. I would conclude just on a note that if any of you are here this afternoon, and Ambassador, we apologize if the room is not as full as we would want to, but we're victims of our own success. There are too many events, but there's another astronomy event, and I believe they're all going to come here very shortly. But if you are still here this afternoon, I would like to invite you. We have a plenary lecture by Dr. Naledi Pandor, our former minister, who was, of course, also former Minister of International Cooperation, Resources, and Science, Technology, and Innovation, but perhaps some will know, but some not. She's also a distinguished professor of Leiden University. She holds the Oort Professorship in Astronomy, and I know that this collaboration specifically has always been very close to her heart. So Ambassador and Bertel, thank you very much for taking the initiative to organize this event. I think it has all its place on our Science Forum program. And I look forward to, it will not be here for a long time, but certainly hope that it will be fruitful discussions and a due celebration. And thank you also very much for the embassy being present in the exhibition. My minister noted that last night when we walked around with him. It was well noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DDG, for your thoughtful reflections and for setting the tone for the session. I would like to now introduce our next speaker, Her Excellency Ambassador Joanne Donovaart, which has been Ambassador of the Netherlands to South Africa since August 2023. And since her arrival, she's been actively engaged in significant events, including visits from the Dutch King and Queen, a knowledge mission and free trade missions that included ministers and high-level participants. Prior to her posting in South Africa, she served in various countries, including South Korea, Sri Lanka, Poland, Mexico, and the Netherlands. Her dynamic energy and commitment to fostering connections have resulted in strong partnerships and friendships that continue to strengthen ties between South Africa, the Netherlands, and beyond. It's my a privilege to invite Ambassador Donovaart to share her reflections. Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you, Aletta. That was a kind words as an introduction. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your kind words, DDG Dan. It's an immense privilege to join you here today. And I heard also that we are also online, so more can share what we are sharing here. To join you here at the Science Forum as we celebrate over 2 decades of bilateral collaboration in the field of astronomy between South Africa and the Netherlands. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to South African Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, the organizers of this forum, and the entire team who has brought this meaningful event to life. Let me also acknowledge the invaluable contributions of our scientific institutions, such as Astrom in the Netherlands and SARAO in South Africa, as well as the many researchers, engineers, policymakers, and community stakeholders who have made this partnership a resounding success. So today, we not just honor the scientific milestones of our collaboration, but also the deeper ties of friendship and shared ambitions that we have brought our 2 countries together. Astronomy, after all, is a field that inspires us to reach beyond borders, both on Earth and across the universe. So our journey began with a shared vision, rooted in the recognition that collaboration is key to unlocking the mysteries of the cosmos. From the earliest work with VLBI to the groundbreaking advancements of MeerKAT and LOFAR, and now to our ambitious contributions to the Square Kilometre Array Observatory, this partnership has achieved extraordinary results. So the Netherlands brings world-renowned expertise in radio astronomy, exemplified by the success of LOFAR, while South Africa provides not only the technical expertise behind MeerKAT, but also unparalleled location in the Southern Hemisphere, a gateway to the stars. And I had the privilege to visit it with a couple of colleagues last year or earlier this year, and it's amazing to see that place. So together with all the international partners, we have achieved scientific breakthroughs that have expanded human knowledge and fostered a global network of researchers dedicated to exploring the universe. But while we gaze at the sky, we also remain grounded in the impact our work has on local communities. The innovations driven by astronomy, whether it's in data science, artificial intelligence, or engineering, have far-reaching applications in fields as diverse as finance, healthcare, and even the gaming industry. And in Southern Africa, this work has generated meaningful opportunities, particularly in rural and remote areas. Astronomy has spurred economic growth through astrotourism, created employment for artisans, and fostered connections with the international community. And it has strengthened national research capacity and supported human capital development, cultivating a generation of scientists, engineers, and thinkers who will lead us into the future. And while we celebrate our achievements, we must also look to the future. Emerging fields like astrotourism and indigenous astronomy hold great promise, offering opportunities to integrate scientific research with cultural heritage and economic development. And initiatives like the Southern African PhD program, supported by Dutch institutions, are crucial to ensuring a robust and diverse pipeline of talent in decades to come. Diversity, inclusion, and equality are and must remain at the heart of our collaboration. The universe belongs to all of us, and our work in astronomy is most impactful when it reflects the diversity of perspectives and experiences that drive innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, partnerships like ours remind us what is possible when we work together. Through collaboration, we can achieve breakthroughs that are greater than the sum of individual efforts. And on behalf of the Netherlands, I express my deep gratitude to South African government, particularly the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, for their steadfast commitment to this partnership. And thank you also to the dedicated scientists and institutions whose passion for discovery has made this past 2 decades so inspiring. And thank you to the Science Forum South Africa for hosting the celebration of shared achievements. Now allow me to make a personal note here. Dear Dan, I heard that in a previous life you worked as the South Africa Science Attaché in Brussels. And in that capacity, you played a very important role in the promotion of support for the South Africa's role in the SKA. Your efforts paved the way for a long-standing partnership between our two governments, with the Netherlands as one of the first, or perhaps even maybe the first, one of the first supporters of bringing the SKA to South Africa. And today's celebration is therefore also a celebration of your work and efforts to bringing our countries and our scientists closer to each other. So thank you very much. Also on behalf of your good friends at the Dutch Ministry of Education, Culture and Science in the Netherlands. So dear ladies and gentlemen, let me close by expressing my sincere wish that our collaboration will continue in the next 20 years, that it will continue to grow, guided by the spirit of innovation, mutual respect and a shared love for the stars. Thank you so much.
Ambassador, we thank you for your reflections and for sharing the inspiring milestones that have shaped this collaboration. Thank you so much. Colleagues, we now move into the next segment of this session, where we will trace the history of the astronomical advancements in each country and the growth of their collaborative partnership from past to present. So our first speaker for this segment is Dr. Adrian Tablady, the Deputy Managing Director at the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. And over the last decade, he has primarily been involved in developing Africa's successful bid to host the SKA, the establishment of the SKA Observatory as an intergovernmental treaty organization, and ensuring readiness to host the SKA in South Africa. His more recent research interests include the realization of socio-economic impact for investment in research infrastructure and development of a national open science policy. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Adrian Tablady. It's your slide. Ready?
It's not my slide, but I'm assuming it's going to come up now. Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. I control it. Yes, I can. Hope you can all see me. And I certainly cannot do justice to the many key figures and events over the past few decades that have really contributed to the development of radio astronomy in South Africa and the collaboration between ourselves and colleagues in the Netherlands. But forgive my alumni bias here, but it's perhaps true to say that the real impetus for development of radio astronomy in South Africa certainly started in a small university called Rhodes University in Grahamstown, now Makanda. And perhaps this is arguably the first radio telescope in Africa, built in 1958 on what is now a sports field at the university. But it's probably true to say that it is one of a range of instruments and facilities that really helped to establish and grow radio astronomy research in South Africa. Oops, going the wrong way. But really what is perhaps a key milestone in that development, and certainly in terms of development of research infrastructure, was the establishment of the NASA Deep Space Instrumentation Facility, DSIF, in 1961, built remarkably over 6 months. I suspect that the perhaps health and safety regulatory environment wasn't as observant as it is today, which of course allowed for photographers to be suspended over the dish and take some remarkable photos, which are in the archives of the Hartebeest Astronomy Observatory. But really it was one of 3 locations around the world that were responsible for monitoring of deep space probes beyond the Earth's orbit. But of course, unlike today, when there's a prevalence of mega satellite constellations to be monitoring, back then there perhaps weren't as many. And so what do you do when there aren't any space probes flying into space? Well, clearly do some radio astronomy. And there were some publications even as early as 1965 by the first director of the Hartebeest Astronomy Observatory, Dr. George Nicholson. And in fact, VLBI observations were taking place as early as 1967, and certainly by 1970. So following disinvestment by NASA in 1973, DSS 51 was reborn as the Hartebeest Hook Radio Astronomy Observatory. And it was initially operated by the CSIR and later transferred to what is now the National Research Foundation. Its first director being Dr. George Nicholson, located over here, and he continued to be the first director for a number of decades after this time. I can't quite remember when he retired, but it was certainly 2004 or so, I think. But like any good astronomers, right, they never really leave. They just find themselves in an empty office in the corridors and just continue pitching up to work. Right, now it has stopped moving forward. Sorry, it's now stopped moving. Right, there we go. I think what is important about Hartebeest Hook is well, a number of things, but there certainly were steps towards global collaboration through really recognizing that Hartebeest Hook could play a really substantial role in the global network of VLBI arrays. And was undertaking astronomical VLBI for since the 70s, ultimately joining the European VLBI network as a full member in approximately 2011 and 2012, after many years of association, and subsequently JIVE. So really establishing a strong connection with the Dutch radio astronomy community. And there's in fact a picture over here of, I believe it's the first EVN meeting at Hartebeest Hook, all the directors of the relevant partner observatories located there. I think what one can immediately see, and I'll speak to this later, is the real strategic role that Hartebeest Hook has played globally as part of the VLBI arrays around the world. Since then, an introduction of geodetic and astrometric VLBI, the site has really become a true fiducial site with a range of co-located instrumentation. I believe this may have been superseded since the information was published. One of 5 in the world having the range of instrumentation, co-located instrumentation. And there's what the site looks like now with a host of facilities and astronomical instrumentation. Perhaps what is also important to note is that given the gaps, as you can see here, until Hartebeest Hook was really the only VLBI-capable facility on the African continent, and there's a huge gap over here, which is ripe for investment in astronomical research infrastructure, both in infrastructure platforms as well as capacity. And so the prospect of and current and future developments of VLBI research infrastructure and capacity on the African continent poses a remarkable opportunity, both in terms of scientific opportunities for global astronomy and the EVN, as well as development impact within the African partner countries. And I must highlight here the really fantastic project of the African Millimeter Telescope being deployed through Radboud University in Namibia. So I won't go into this slide because DDG Don mentioned really a pivotal time in 1994 with the advent of the dawn of democracy in South Africa, a realization that it was really important, despite the developmental objectives of a country like South Africa, it was really important to still invest in basic competencies in flagship sciences such as physics and astronomy. And this was later codified in the research and development strategy, which really identified this astronomy geographic advantage, later realized through Africa's successful bid to host the SKA subsequently. Well, what is this astronomy advantage? Well, I've really pointed out the fantastic location and advantage that South Africa holds to really support astronomical observations of next generation facilities. Here is a really interesting population density map of South Africa. And it's almost as if at that dawn of democracy, they drew a line around where everyone lived and called the rest of the Northern Cape. The Northern Cape has the lowest population density in South Africa, something like less than 2 people per square kilometre, but most of those people are actually located in the metropolitan areas of Kimberley and Uppington. And low population density means low risk of interference, both radio interference, people like to carry around cell phones and watch television, and optical interference as well. And so the area exhibits fantastic locations which would support maximizing the scientific return of next generation astronomical facilities. And one of the excellent reasons for location or co-hosting of the SKA facility both in South Africa and Western Australia, and here we are celebrating Africa today. DDG Don indicated Dr. Manaledi Panda would actually be making a plenary presentation speech later on today, and she of course was quite pivotal and heavily involved in the SKA program. So stepping forward, I think it's quite important to note that one of the significant advantages of the SKA program, and this is a reflection of the current membership of the SKA Observatory, and it does provide a platform for global collaboration, and specifically collaboration between South Africa and the Netherlands, which have strong radio astronomy communities. So today we have the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory, which resulted as a merger between the SKA program as well as the Hartebeespoort Radio Astronomy Observatory as a national facility of the National Research Foundation, responsible for implementing South Africa's strategic investments in radio astronomy. It's approximately 550 staff and really delivers a range of high-impact programs, ranging from human capital development, science engagement, design, construction, and operation of radio astronomy facilities, and importantly, protected areas and providing and exhibiting protected areas for radio astronomy. It's arguably the crown jewel in SARAO's portfolio is the MeerKAT radio telescope, and designed and constructed as a next generation facility. It is really a precursor to the SKA. But I think what is critical about this facility is whilst I say it was designed and constructed, South African designed and constructed, it really learned and took advantage of the many decades of experience that was located globally and specifically in the Netherlands. And we really, the staff and the SARAO engineers learned a huge amount from the experience located in Astron and elsewhere to really ensure that this facility was able to kind of progress and develop new technologies. What is also important about this is the site. And I think it's really critical to note that this site has not only played host to something like MeerKAT, but also to guest instruments such as the Hydrogen Epoch of Reionization. And in fact, a number of years ago, also hosted a number of prototype technology projects on behalf of Astron. For example, Vivaldi arrays and development of aperture arrays, which was realized through the Aperitif project at Astron and deployed on Westerbork. One of the early demonstrator models was in fact hosted here in South Africa at the SKA site. So really it is now, and unfortunately, Shamila shared with me the most recent update. So this is the update before the most recent update, but I'll tell you what the differences are. But this kind of pinwheel, well, it's complicated wheel over here, but really reflecting the international participation in the MeerKAT science program. So these are open time calls. So what we do is we have these open time calls and various PIs respond to those open time calls. And there really is a growing participation from Dutch astronomers in MeerKAT. In fact, more importantly, and this has grown to 18, these are has progressed to 18 PIs, which means they are reflective of large teams, science teams, and so certainly a large number of Dutch astronomers are participating in the MeerKAT science program. Importantly, delivering one of the, at least two, I think, leading to key science programs and key scientific results that are being carried out by MeerKAT. So there's been collaboration, scientific technical collaboration, and specifically skills development, where we have established collaboration models that are effective not only in South Africa, but on the African continent. One of the most important things about the collaboration has been around the development of a community. It's perhaps true to say that when all this started, there was a handful of radio astronomers in South Africa. And over the last 15 years, we've established a significant, almost an exponential increase in size and diversity in the radio astronomy community located in South Africa, and influenced by many former Dutch radio astronomers and people that have been involved in Dutch astronomy. Professor Luc Smirnoff over there, previously employed at Jive, and a number of other astronomers that really contributed to the development of a community in South Africa. And these collaborations exist today and extremely important. Finally, one final word, and the ambassador mentioned a very important thing. It's about science, it's about technical collaboration, but it's also about impact and delivering impact to local communities and at a national level. And so it's always important to recognize, and I won't speak to the details of this because there will be a panel discussion later that address it, but I think it's just important just to highlight that as we invest in radio astronomy infrastructure, it's done through this impact framework, identifying how we can not only deliver science products, deliver excellent technologies and scientific instrumentation, but also deliver impact to the broader communities in South Africa and abroad. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Tiplady, for this insightful overview and highlighting the historical journey leading up to the SKA and also the significance to this collaboration. The second speaker in this session is Prof. Patrick Vogt, Professor of Astronomy at the University of Cape Town and Interim Director of the Inter-University Institute for Data Intensive Astronomy. Prof. Vogt earned his first degree from the University of Groningen in 1994 and his PhD from the University of Cape Town in 1998. He has held several leadership roles, including serving as president of the South Africa Institute of Physics and as head of the Astronomy Department at the University of Cape Town from 2015 to 2023. Please join me in welcoming Prof. Patrick Vogt. Thank you, Patrick.
Good morning, colleagues. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I want to acknowledge, let me just go one slide back. That's the starting slide. I just want to acknowledge the Deputy Director General, Dan, and the Ambassador for really setting up a wonderful and exciting program today, talking about the collaboration between South Africa and the Netherlands in astronomy, celebrating the last 2 decades. But what I would like to do here is also to take a little bit of a longer look back to some of the earliest collaborations and focusing also on optical astronomy as well. So this particular picture highlights that in many ways. So there's the SARAO telescope that you see and the beautiful night sky. You mentioned gateway to the universe earlier. This really exemplifies that with the Milky Way coming overhead. And it also exemplifies South Africa's geographic advantage, which was the foundation for many of these collaborations over, in fact, what I'll show, 140 years in time, where access to the southern sky was the driver for collaborations between the Netherlands and South Africa. So this story starts, there we go, starts between a collaboration and, in fact, also a friendship. You mentioned earlier about friendships between scientists. This was very much a friendship between David Gill, who was the director at the Cape Observatory. I've put the dates, I don't know where the pointer. He was director at the Cape Observatory from 1879 to 1907, and together with Jacobus Kaptein in Groningen, they worked on the survey of the southern sky, known as the Cape Doornmoestrung project, which lasted over 5 years. And it basically involved David Gill taking the observations from the Cape of the southern hemisphere, sending those photographic plates to Groningen, where Kaptein was measuring them very accurately. So in a little bit more detail, going the wrong way. What happened, in fact, in 1882, this is how far back we go, in 1882, Gill recognized the importance of astrophotography, photographic plates of the deep sky. There was a great comet that came by in 1882. This is a picture, a photograph taken by Gill from the Cape. And if you look carefully, you can see lots of stars in the background. And they realized that this was a great way to photograph and measure stars. So Gill, with the telescope in the Cape, there's Gill, measured the entire southern sky and sent the photographic plates, here sort of in a collection of boxes, to Groningen, to Kaptein, who measured in his laboratory the positions of all these stars very carefully. And this led to the model of the universe, the Kaptein universe, named after him, which was a model of the size and shape of the galaxy, our own Milky Way. And the size scale is given here in parsecs, so multiply this with 3 to get light years out. For the scale, there's about 30,000 light years. And this was quite revolutionary for the time when this was presented in 1905, 1906. This model of the universe, and it was the result of this long-standing friendship between Gill and Kaptein, starting in 1880, but basically lasting a lifetime. A lot has been written about this, in fact, and I refer you to this book by Piet van der Kruijt, former Groningen director of astronomy, who wrote about this as well. What actually happened out of that collaboration is that students from Kaptein came to South Africa, and one of the famous students in that regard is Willem de Sitter, very famous astronomer in his own right, known for the Einstein-de Sitter model of the universe. He was chair of astronomy at Leiden Observatory, and he came out here for 2 years in the Cape in the late 1800s, and then came out a couple of times, and he established a very close relation with Robert Innes, who was the director of the Union Observatory, later the Republican Observatory near Johannesburg. And they set up an agreement and an establishment of an observatory in the southern sky. Again, access to the southern sky was the driver of this collaboration. But again, this was a collaboration of friendship, scientific exploration of the southern sky. And here you see a picture of the Leiden Southern Station, taken in 1970 at a site that's now known as Toppieshoek, where the Leiden Southern Station was based. And on the next slide, there's a list of times and timelines of disagreement. Again, going back to 1923 between Innes and De Sitter. But it's actually when the city lights in Johannesburg were growing too much, and they developed a separate site near the Toppieshoek site now at Hartbeespoort, which then became the Leiden Southern Station. Between 1954 and 1978, a lot of observations of the southern sky were made there in collaboration between South Africa and the Leiden Observatory in this case. I have a personal connection to one of the telescopes that used to be there and was moved to Chile in 1978. That's the one on the right here, the Dutch 0.9 meter flux collector telescope, as it was called. My first observing as a third-year student was in Chile with this particular telescope, and it's really wonderful to see that long history reflected here. The Toppieshoek site is very interesting in its own right. It's not an historic astronomy site, but it's also very known for its archaeological importance for South Africa. And it was just recently, apologies for the overrun here of the slides, it was just recently declared a national heritage site as well. So that reflects a lot of the early history in optical astronomy between South Africa and the Netherlands. But of course, in the Netherlands also, also the development of radio astronomy flourished. And this was another student of Kaptein Jan Oort, a very famous Dutch astronomer. In fact, DDG just mentioned that Naledi Pando's professorship is named after Jan Oort, a very famous Dutch astronomer, instrumental in the establishment of radio astronomy in the Netherlands. So he was director of the observatory, Leiden Observatory, between 1945 and 1970. And during this time, radio astronomy flourished in the Netherlands. So there's a picture of the opening of the Dwingelo telescope in 1956. There's Oort and there's Queen Juliana present at the opening. And there's an interesting link with this telescope to a more recent discovery made with that telescope by an astronomer, René Kraan-Korteweg, who was the second chair of astronomy at the University of Cape Town, Dutch astronomer who used that telescope to discover a nearby large galaxy, a galaxy on our doorstep that was previously unrecognized. Right, so it didn't stop there. So also in 1970, Jan Oort was instrumental in developing the radio interferometer, the Westerbork array. Adrian mentioned the Westerbork array earlier as a pioneering testbed for aperture arrays technology. This is a picture of the Westerbork array as it was in the early days. And really, this was a lot of pioneering work in Dutch astronomy was going on in trying to understand the universe through measuring neutral hydrogen gas in galaxies. This is a key science team for the SKA. It's a key science team that South African astronomers and Dutch astronomers are working on together. So that's a lot about the history, but I also want to have a forward look. And so preparations for the Square Kilometre Array, and we've heard a little bit about the journey already in the earlier talks, over the past 2 decades have led to a strengthening of the collaboration between South Africa and the Netherlands, building on this over a century of existing collaborations, and as I'll show, connecting science themes as well. One thing that really facilitated in this was a joint call by the NWO and the NRF on a program for astronomy and enabling technologies for astronomy, both in optical and radio astronomy, which led to a lot of collaborations on VLBI, on MeerLicht, MeerKAT science in preparation for MeerKAT science. And it would really be great to see if we can continue that in terms of the data science for the SKA and the SKA itself as well. So there's LOFAR, a picture, an aerial view of LOFAR, a wonderful telescope, inaugurated in 2010, as the DDG mentioned, inaugurated by Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands. And this is an aerial view. And what I wanted to highlight here is, in fact, these two telescopes are on different hemispheres, but they have a shared part of the sky. And the shared sky is actually exemplified by the 6 publications that you see here from the last 2 years, actually. It's really ramping up. Between South Africa and the Netherlands, between LOFAR and MeerKAT. So these are LOFAR MeerKAT observations of the shared sky that has led to this work. So that's really exciting and a really great way for going forward. In terms of this collaboration, in the Netherlands, there's a very important collaboration of the Netherlands Research School for Astronomy, or NOVA in short, which combines the 4 universities that are working in astronomy together in collaboration with Astron and Astron. And this is now celebrating its 25th anniversary. In fact, next week, there's a big celebration for that. And that's a very important collaboration. They have defined 3 different networks of science focus teams, and I put the flags there next to it. But in fact, in South Africa, through our decadal astronomy strategy, a multi-wavelength strategy plan, there's a strong overlap between some of these networks. Astrophysics and extreme conditions, formation, evolution of galaxies are also key focus points in South Africa. And this is really why the collaboration between South Africa and the Netherlands works so well, because there are all these touching points in science there. I've given a list of universities in South Africa where astronomy is being taught or researched, and this is a growing list. Universities such as University of Venda, University of Zululand as well, are also actively trying to grow astronomy within their university cohort. South Africa doesn't have a formal collaboration like that, but there are lots of different networks in which these universities collaborate, and that's really great. One of the things that came out of the Network 3 collaboration between the Netherlands and South Africa, and Paul is here in the audience, Paul and I worked together on the MeerKAT telescope. So it's a small optical telescope in Sutherland that co-observes with the MeerKAT telescope, and unfortunately the projection doesn't show it very well, but this is a MeerKAT composite image of the Southern Cross, a key recognizable constellation in the southern sky. And at the bottom here, you see an overlay of the MeerKAT galactic plane survey. So both optical and radio probing different astrophysical aspects of the southern Milky Way simultaneously. The size for the full moon is just given there for scale. Adrian highlighted the very important capacity development aspect through the HCD program at SARAO. There are quite a few programs running in South Africa. So the HCD program, and I think this number is outdated, but definitely over 1,000 scholarships have been awarded, maybe 1,500 by now. But there's also the NASP, the National Astrophysics Space Science Program, which is established 20 years ago, network of 10 universities, and we've had almost 700 graduates of that program. And this really highlights the importance of collaboration, the university networks together. There's DARA throughout Africa, development in Africa through radio astronomy. That's a very important program. And wearing my hat as IDEA director, I just want to highlight the importance of IDEA for training students working with the MeerKAT data on research cloud environments in coming to terms with the big data of the MeerKAT telescope and the SKA. And I think there's a lot of importance there going forward towards the SKA of creating partnerships there. The Netherlands is the 3rd biggest user of ILIFU if you look by country. So that's South Africa, UK, and then the Netherlands in size. And a lot of students working on MeerKAT data in the Netherlands are working on this research cloud. So it's a training tool for the data science, but also then there will be spin-offs of that for other activities. The ambassador mentioned the PhD program, and I just wanted to highlight that here. So given all these human capacity development programs like NASP, like the SARAO HCD program, and given the strong alignment between the research focus teams between South Africa and the Netherlands, it's not surprising that many of the graduates, the master graduates from the SARAO bursary program or NASP, have gone on to do PhDs in the Netherlands. So there's Diane, Mpati, and Sally, getting their PhDs from the universities in the Netherlands. In fact, all 4 universities in the Netherlands are actively training and supervising South African students in partnership with researchers in South Africa. So I just want to conclude that given this long history that exists and given the intensifying of the partnership over the last 20 years, since the democracy of South Africa and in the development of Square Kilometre Array and MeerKAT and LOFAR, it's really a wonderful opportunity to further grow this in terms of the data science, in terms of the astronomy. And I wanted to end with, I started with a picture of the Sutherland, the SALT telescope under the southern sky. Here you see this picture of MeerKAT under the southern sky. And it's really the shared view, optical and radio view of the southern sky that binds our communities together and works together to build a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Wout, for this really wonderful overview, and I mean, especially shedding light on some of the really early history and some of the critical partnerships between South Africa and the Netherlands. Colleagues, we now move into the final segment of this session. And here we will look at some of the highlights of the key science projects in astronomy between South Africa and the Netherlands. And we will hear about some of the transformative projects that have defined our collaboration. And at the end of the session, also about the essential role of research councils. So our first speaker for this segment is Prof. John McKean, who is Professor of Radio Astronomy at the Kaptein Astronomical Institute at the University of Groningen in the Netherlands, and also the DSTI NRF National Facilities Research Chair, hosted by the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory and co-hosted by the University of Pretoria in South Africa. Previous to his current position, Prof. McKean was a staff astronomer at Astron, and therefore he has very deep and active connections between South Africa and the Netherlands. His research interests are in studying black holes and dark matter for extremely high-resolution imaging of the universe with very long baseline interferometry. Please join me in welcoming Prof. John McKean.
Thank you very much for the warm welcome and the invitation to speak here today. So I'm John McKean, and I'm one of the people that really demonstrate the collaboration between the two countries, where I have essentially a position both in the Netherlands and in South Africa. And that's a slightly different way of sending people to go visit for a while and work somewhere, but actually having your roots in each of the countries helps you get those deep connections. So I was asked to say something about very long baseline interferometry, which is not a very catchy title, but I can only highlight a few things in the time which I have. Maybe now. Okay, so when we look at the night sky, and this is using the Hubble Space Telescope, you really see some amazing pictures. And what we see are many galaxies, which are collections of stars, and how those galaxies form and evolve is very important for us to understand our place in the universe. But what you may notice is that they all have different shapes and sizes and colors. And why is that the case? And it's all something to do with their evolution. And what we believe is that the central part of every galaxy is a black hole. And is this mirrored? Thank you. So here's a lovely artist impression of a black hole, where this supermassive object, which sits at the center of the galaxy, actually has a profound effect on how the galaxy forms and evolves. And this beautiful illustration shows a disk of material falling onto the black hole, and the black hole will grow over time. And due to the spin of the black hole and its mass, it then shoots out these jets. And there's this beautiful artist impression of this sort of white plasma that's being emitted by this black hole. And we can use this information to trace the properties of the black holes. Now, the problem is that this is an extremely small, this is a really small part of the universe, and you have to have very detailed observations to see it. And the advantage of very long baseline interferometry, as shown here on the right, is going from the very large scale structures you see, and in each image we're increasing the angular resolution by having our telescopes further apart. And finally, you see this wonderful image that was made, thank you, that was made by the Event Horizon Telescope team, partly led by Professor Heine Falke at the Radboud University in the Netherlands, and involving technical expertise from the Joint Institute for VLBI in Europe, and in the South Africa side, led by Professor Roger Dean. And this was a really spectacular image that really captured the imagination of the public, but it gave us our first impression of what the shadow of a black hole looks like. Okay, now the next part of the universe that we try and understand is so-called dark matter. We think that most of the universe is actually comprised of dark matter, and if we were to look at our own galaxy with dark matter goggles on, we wouldn't see stars. What we'd see is lots of dark matter clumps, and unfortunately they don't emit light, so we need to find a way to try and understand what they look like, or what the composition of the dark matter is. So for this, we do extremely high angular resolution observations using very long baseline interferometry of, say, a distant radio source. So this is a black hole, that's a very distant part of the universe. And then as the light travels through the universe, it intersects with another galaxy, and that galaxy causes the light to be deflected due to its gravitational potential. And instead of seeing this nice image of the emission from the black hole, what we see is something highly distorted. And this allows us to map the dark matter in the universe, because this is purely dependent on the mass that we see from the background object, very distant to where we are here on Earth. So an example of this, an example of this is shown here. This is what our data looks like, which doesn't look particularly nice. However, what we have to do is develop very sophisticated techniques in order to understand what the underlying signal is. And this is what we can now do using rather advanced image processing techniques. And this is a great way for us to develop new ways of understanding our data and then getting the key information out from our data. But of course, what we would like to do is to study many, many more objects in this way, so we can understand the properties of dark matter, and we can also understand the properties of black holes. And in order to do that, we'd like to try and look at many, many more objects using this technique. So this is a similar map that we saw earlier, where we see the Hartwistuk Radio Observatory here in South Africa. And as Adrian pointed out, there's very few telescopes currently available within Africa that we can use. These are the different types. These are the locations of the different telescopes around the world that we can combine to form a very long baseline interferometry. But our main partner in South Africa is with the European VLBI network, which is hosted and centered in Vingelo at the Astron headquarters as part of the Joint Institute for VLBI in Europe, although we also do collaborations with Australia. And what we have to do currently is that the data that's taken from our telescope is sent to the Netherlands to be processed and put together with all the other data that comes from the other telescopes in the world. However, in the future, when we have many, many more telescopes in the Netherlands, the question is, should we be sending all of our data to the Netherlands, or can we work in partnership with our colleagues in the Netherlands? So can it be a case where the data from Europe is also sent back here to the Netherlands so we can combine it with the Square Kilometre Array, for example? And this will require developing the infrastructure, the scientific knowledge, and the expertise, and it offers a great opportunity for collaboration between the Netherlands, which has a great deal of expertise and history working in this area, and then what we can build here in South Africa in connection with the Square Kilometre Array. And for this, it essentially means building a large computing facility from which we can connect all these data together, train students in high-performance computing and data analysis techniques. And what we'd like to see is an African Center for VLBI here in South Africa. So in order to try and move this along, there's a collaboration between University of Groningen, JIVE, SARAO, University of Pretoria, and Astron, where we would like to try and increase the numbers of objects, the numbers of black holes that we can image. This is not such a pretty image as the artist impression, but what we'd like to do is make many, many observations of these black holes. And the issue we have is that when we do VLBI, just as you're reading a book, you focus on each word and you focus on one part of the page. There are many words on that page, and there are many objects, many black holes we can observe when we're doing our observations. And what we need is computing so that instead of just focusing on one object, we can actually look at all of these objects that are in the field of our telescope. This can increase the numbers of objects we study by several orders of magnitude, and potentially increase the numbers of detections by an order of magnitude or so. And this is important because by providing high quality data sets to our students, we can then grow the community. So currently, this is what happens. This is what happens in the Netherlands at JIVE. The raw data from the telescopes are sent via the internet to the location to JIVE, where they're stored. They're then correlated or put together using the supercomputer to make the images that we like. However, they only look at one object at a time, typically. And what we would like to do is we've recently obtained funding from NVO to save the data that's taken, so it doesn't have to be deleted. And then that data will then be transported to the Netherlands, to South Africa, to the University of Pretoria, where we will store some of it. And then we will use the supercomputer facilities here in South Africa to recorrelate the data, as we call it, and produce many, many more images of the radio sky at high angular resolution. And our hope is that we will then send the data back to the Netherlands, where it will be available to the public to use. So this is our team at the moment. It's an international team where we have a PhD student who has a joint PhD position. So this is slightly different from what we heard earlier. We have students who perhaps go to the Netherlands for training. What we'd like to move forward with is a joint PhD program where students can actually be at both universities, being trained and working with staff in both universities. And the first student I have in this project is Celestine from France. But we also have students from other African partner countries working on the projects. We have Mercy from Botswana, Theo from South Africa, and Namakau from Zambia. And what we're looking to do is to, in the future, as brought up, we would like to have many telescopes within Africa. And as part of the Africa Radio Astronomy program, this is a network. It's not just infrastructure, it's not just computing, but it's people. And that's something that we can already start to work with. And what we need to do in order to develop such a facility centered in South Africa, but also extending into Southern Africa and ASK partner countries, is to develop that local scientific, operational, and technical expertise in the field of high-resolution radio astronomy. The program that we're developing, we're expecting that it will really have significant scientific impact because we'll be able to produce data sets of these black holes that the students can immediately use for their work, so that they don't have to worry about proposing or other things. But the key aspect I want to finish on is that where we're moving and where VLBI in Southern Africa is going in the future is that we're trying to develop an equal partnership between JIVE and Astron, who have the expertise in operations, with our own expertise in data processing and data analysis. We want to develop this equal partnership so that we can have this VLBI community that stretches from the Netherlands to South Africa. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. McKean, for that very interesting overview of VLBI projects. We will now go to our next speaker, which is Dr. Shamila Goodhart, and she will talk on MeerKAT and SKA key science projects. Dr. Goodhart is the SKA MIT and MeerKAT Head of Science Operations, and she began her career at the Hartbeespoort Radio Astronomy Observatory before playing a pivotal role in commissioning KAT7 and MeerKAT and successfully transitioning MeerKAT to full science operations. Her journey with SKA South Africa started at Astron in the Netherlands, where she gained invaluable training in operating the Westerbork Synthesis radio telescope. And as I said, today she will discuss key science projects with MeerKAT and SKA. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Shamila Goodhart. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Ambassador and DDG and others for inviting me here today to talk to you about some of the science of MeerKAT and the SKA. Unfortunately, I cannot possibly cover even a fraction of all of the science that we are doing currently, but I'll do my best to highlight some of the relevant science for this meeting. which way do we go? Okay, it's this way. Right, so you've heard about the MeerKAT quite a lot, so I won't go into great details on it. So this is now fully operational in the Karoo. You can see some pictures from the construction way back when. Installation of the dishes started in 2014, and then we had the inauguration ceremony in July 2018. So 4 years from the time the first dish arrived to having all 64 connected up and making images. So for the inauguration, we decided, let's look at the Galactic Center. Not a place one would normally look because it's very complicated to image in the radio. And much to our surprise, we did it. I think this picture pops up everywhere these days. I'm sure you've seen it before. The first scientific paper from the MeerKAT 64 dish telescope was this. Do we have a pointer? So was this image on these bipolar jets. So when we were imaging the galactic center, we started seeing hints of these. So, am I talking back to myself? Okay. So what we decided while we were just doing test observations is to just follow these jets all the way up. And this is the first time the structure has been seen. Right. So I've shown you the inauguration image, which was in 2018. If you look at this one, you see the publication date is 2022. So this is the same data, extensively reprocessed. Prof. McKean showed you what sort of artifacts you'll see in the interferometric data. If you had to zoom in on that first image from the inauguration, you would also see a lot of artifacts. So while it was visually and aesthetically very pleasing, it wasn't ready to do science on it. We still had to do a lot of correction of all of those artifacts of very advanced imaging techniques. And so this is just to highlight how difficult it is to process interferometric data and get a high quality image out of it. And this is a challenge that we're all facing. Right. So the MeerKAT large survey projects are now drawing to a close. So we, after we redid all of our proposal reviews in 2016 because the telescope was far more sensitive than we had expected it to be. And that required some re-optimizing of the program. So the large survey projects, there were 8 that were conducted from 2018. 2 of them started in 2020, one of them being the Mongoose project, which uses the narrowband spectral line mode of the MeerKAT telescope, was one of the last modes to be commissioned. So several of those large survey programs have been completed. Others are approaching completion in the next year. So we're entering into a stage of MeerKAT operations where all of the time is open. Anybody can propose for projects. And we've also now included a new category called extra large proposals, which are anything from 300 up to a maximum of 2,200 hours over multiple years. And those proposals are currently under review. Right. So slightly unpacking a bit of what Adrian showed you. Yeah. I unfortunately only found the updated slide late last night, so Adrian didn't get it in time. Right. So the open time projects initially were using 1/3 of the telescope time. We're now increasing that fraction as the large survey projects are winding down. Right, so the first open call was only for South Africans, just to maximize South African investment in the telescope and give our students a chance to get their hands on some MeerKAT data. After that, we had no restrictions. I don't have the numbers for the actually accepted proposals. So these are just the submitted proposals. So as you can see over the years, there's been a steady interest from our colleagues from the Netherlands. in using MeerKAT, even up to now in 2024. We've just awarded over 2,500 hours on open time. Right, and each time we go, we're still building new capabilities on MeerKAT. So it continues being opening up exciting new science. And we are actively working on the VLBI, getting a VLBI mode operational with MeerKAT, and that is in collaboration with colleagues at Jive, and I believe they've managed to find fringes with some test data that we've taken. Still a lot of work to be done, making sure that getting the data into a format that can be used by Jive on a regular basis, but we are getting there. We've certainly proven that it's possible. So, right, just touching on two of the large surveys. So ThunderCat, Vout is a co-investigator on ThunderCat. Of course, one of the things that happens when you build the most sensitive radio telescope in the world is that you find things that you hadn't expected to see. One of them being this stellar mass black hole, so a tiny black hole, not as big as the ones at the center of galaxies, has these jets, which we could actually resolve and see how they evolved over time. And this was very unexpected to be able to see that. And also the importance here is, again, with transient objects, things that are changing in the sky, being able to observe at multiple wavelengths is quite crucial to get the full picture of what's going on and, to really physically model these processes. And Mongoose is led by Prof. Erwin de Blok, who is at Astron. And this is to image 30 nearby galaxies to very deeply, so 55 hours per galaxy, and this has been running for several years. I think these numbers are slightly out of date now. The observations are more than 88% complete. 19 galaxies have been observed to their full depth, so we've ticked them off on the observing roster, and the survey description paper is now out. And there is also a data release available, so anybody can go along and download those very first images of the galaxies. It won't be the full depth images, but pretty much the first look. So what's next? So currently there's a lot of construction going on site. There's massive dust clouds everywhere. And we've basically got the MeerKAT extension that is under construction, and this increases the baselines and the resolution of the MeerKAT and adds on additional receivers, as well as we have to build a new correlator, which is running on a GPU. So, so that's exciting, but at the same time, we're also building the SKA observatory. So I'm not going to focus too much on low, just know that there are two telescopes. There are 3 sites. Our global headquarters is in the UK. And we have the SKA mid-office here in, not here, we're not in Cape Town right now. SKA mid-office in Cape Town, plus the site at Carnarvon. And I mean, some key dates, we're expected to go to sites verification very, very soon. And expecting to be operational, probably not fully operational, as with MeerKAT, we slowly roll out capabilities as we go along, but I'm really very excited to see what we can do. Again, touching on the difficulty of working with large data sets, IDEA has been crucial in South Africa to enable researchers to actually process and analyze the data. And it's clear this data is too big to move around easily. So you basically want to bring your astronomers to the data. Although and our solution to that is that once we have actually processed the data, produced images, these then get copied to the SKA regional centers, which are situated around the world. So each member country will have a regional center where researchers can analyze and work with the data, because these data rates are enormous. You cannot work with this data on your laptop. So just some of the science that SKA is expecting to work on. So we have these science working groups, which are developing science cases, which then help us make sure the telescope's reaching its expected capabilities and able to do the science that our community wants to do. And all of these science working groups have members from institutes in the Netherlands. I'm not sure how much time I'm doing for time. I'll just very quickly rush over this. Yeah, we are looking at a lot of very exciting questions. Some of these MeerKAT's already helping to answer and showing us where we need to go next. So things like, how do planets form? Was Einstein right with general relativity? How does matter cycle between stars and interstellar medium? All of these good things, which I'm sure there's a lot of information out there already, so I won't spend too much more time on this. But yeah, and also, yeah, we really do need that synergy with other facilities. So it's very much shared skies all around. Right. So construction status, SKA is getting along very well. Their antennas are a lot more easy to construct. It's quite a journey and quite a process to install all of these dishes. So we've got now 4 dishes on site. No, sorry, 3 dishes on site. The 4th one is still in China, which we're using as for testing. So things are really moving fast. They're looking very exciting. So in summary, MeerKAT is fully operational and doing amazing science. VLBI is coming soon with assistance from our colleagues in the Netherlands at JIVE. SKA is nearly here, and we're hoping to do first science in the next 2-3 years. And it is a success only because of the global nature of the project. Every member country contributes their own expertise, and the Netherlands, as we've heard, has been involved from a very long time and has had a great impact, directly and indirectly, and continues to be a key player in the development of the SKA. And I think somebody needs to hit play for me there. I will leave you with this video of our construction. Oh dear.
Cool. Thank you so much. Whoa, now I'm too close. Dr. Goodhart for that very interesting talk. And my apologies. I do realize that asking somebody to ask about, science highlights of MeerKAT and SK and only giving them 10 minutes is quite a tall order. But thank you so much for that. Our next speaker that will talk on the Meerlicht project is Prof. Paul Groot, who is the South African Large Telescope SALT Saatchi Chair and Professor of Astronomy at the University of Cape Town, at the South African Astronomical Observatory and Radboud University in the Netherlands. He's the principal investigator of the Meerlicht and also the Black Gem optical telescopes. Thank you, Prof. Boogert. Please let us welcome Prof. Groot.
Thank you, Aletta, for the short introduction. I actually asked Aletta to keep it short so I have more time to actually show you some science. So it's time to roll up the sleeves, and thank you, Madam Ambassador, for doing that already. And let's go to some science highlights of the MeerKAT telescope and the collaboration between the Netherlands and South Africa. If my presentation can be started, please. Number 7. Great. Can you make it full screen, please? Sorry, while we're waiting, let me say that this the collaboration between Netherlands and South Africa also on this side has been extremely good, and I must mention the program that Professor Wout already mentioned in the preparation between NWO and the NRF. That was key to all the things that we've been doing with MeerKAT and also with MeerLicht, and I certainly hope that we can do this. Thank you. One back, please. I hope that we can definitely do this with the next phase as well. Sorry, that's not working. Can you go one back, please? Okay. So what I want to talk about today is multi-wavelength transient astronomy. We've heard a lot of radio astronomy already, but the universe is studied in much more detail than just in radio waves, also in optical waves, and nowadays also, for instance, in gravitational waves. So on the bottom right, we see the MeerLicht telescope. Left, of course, there's MeerKAT, and in the top right, there's the Virgo gravitational wave observatory near Pisa. And so let me see. This doesn't seem to work for me. So if you can go to the next one, please. Thank you. So we're talking about transient astronomy. So what is this? These are objects that briefly flash up in the night sky, and that we can use to study extreme conditions in the universe. So on the left, you see a merging neutron star that, right? On the left, you see a emerging neutron star. This is supposed to be a video that then emits gravitational waves. Here you see the aftermath of a nuclear explosion on a white dwarf, which is a remnant of a star. And these are slowish moving jets moving out. This is what we call a nova explosion. This is a very particular one. It's the only one where we saw helium being fused. It's an image made by Patrick Wout. And also, for instance, very short flashes in the radio, fast radio bursts. So these are the kinds of objects that we are studying, and these are intrinsically multi-wavelength. You have to study them in more than just one wavelength regime. And so if you can go to the next one, please. The setting is often in these binary systems. So we have a stellar remnant, a white dwarf, a neutron star or a black hole here, and these are stellar mass black holes. And they are being fed gas from a companion, which can be a normal star, or it can also be a remnant of a star. And this gas goes through a disk, an accretion disk, as we call it, that then spirals, makes the gas spirals inwards. And then close to the black hole, these jets are launched. And this is the kind of picture, and we also saw it in the presentation by John McKean, that it can also take place in the centers of galaxies, but then the black holes are much more massive. And this is intrinsically multi-wavelength, because if we can go to the next one, this actually shines in different ways depending on where it is. So the companion is often seen in optical wavelengths or in the infrared. This disk is seen in the optical to the UV. Very close to the compact object, the black hole, the neutron star, we see this light up in X-rays or in the UV. These jets are seen in the radio, and then the whole system emits in gravitational waves. So that immediately shows us that we have to look at all of these together to really understand what's going on. Otherwise, we just see a small detail, but not the whole thing. Next one. To do this, because I said these are flashes, so we need to find them first and then we have to study. So we do this through chains. So we have discovery machines. We've heard about LOFAR and Westerbork Aperitif, the Gaia satellite, European satellite, the MeerKAT array or advanced Virgo. And then we have to find them in their counterparts. And with this we do with the optical telescopes, with Meerlicht, and now also the Black Gem array in Chile. Similar telescopes, so they're basically 4 of the same telescopes, slightly different housing. And then once we found these counterparts, we put the big cannons there. So SALT and the VLT in Chile, and SALT of course here in South Africa, the ALMA array in South America, the ELT being now built in South America, and the SKA once it's built here in South Africa and in Australia. Next one, please. And so this idea of Meerlicht actually came about in this pub in Oxford. So it's sort of an add-on to the ThunderCat large program that Shamila just mentioned. Patrick Wout and Rob Vender, the 2 PIs, and I were having a beer here in the Royal Oak, and we said, we want to study these events both in the radio and the optical. And Patrick and Rob said, can you think of a way to do this in the optical? And then we said, well, let's take the reactive bit out of the equation, right? So we see something, then we actually go and do the follow-up, and then we study. Let's just point an optical telescope together with MeerKAT, always at the same time. Because then when something happens, we're already on sky. We don't have to react because we are there already. And that was the idea for the Meerlicht telescope. And this got started with a startup subsidy from NWO, just to get things going. And then the universities of Radboud, UCT, SAAO as a facility, Amsterdam, Oxford and Manchester. So this collaboration in Dutch, South African and UK astronomy got together and actually designed and built the telescope. Next one, please. So it's located at SAAO, which here on the map of South Africa. Of course, we are up here, right? Where are we? Sorry, further up there. We're off the map, sorry. Here at SAAO in Sutherland is where the Meerlicht telescope is located, and SKA MeerKAT is conveniently close by. So during the night, we can see the same sky. That is the essential point. And next one. And so here's the plateau of Sutherland. It's a bit of an old picture that I actually took myself from a helicopter ride a long time ago. There's many more telescopes now there, sorry. And so here's the Meerlicht telescope, but this is a whole array of optical telescopes that is now being tied together to actually, work together in what is called the Intelligent Observatory. Sorry, this one. So Meerlicht, if we find something, we can send signals to SALT, to Lesedi, and this is also being done from the Atlas telescope, which is actually not in the picture yet. And so this works as one big transient machine. And so here's the Meerlicht telescope itself. It's not a very large telescope. The diameter here of the primary mirror is only 60 centimeters, but it has a wide field of view, and that makes it uniquely suited to actually do this. And so whenever it's possible, this points at the same position in the sky as the MeerKAT radio array. So that we get a signal from SARAO saying we're going to go here, and then the optical telescope follows. And so the uniqueness is in the wide field here at the back of this huge detector. So here's a watch, and this is the whole chip. So we know all these chips in our phones, they're tiny, but this is actually 10 by 10 centimeters, all being active optical service. And with this, we see a large part of the sky. It doesn't come out very well here, but this is 1.5 by 1.5 degrees on the sky. This is one image from the Meerlicht telescope of a part of the Large Magellanic Cloud. Here's the Tarantula Nebula, well known to astronomers. And this is about 13 times the full moon. And that is a single image. That's all of that we see in one go. And then we can actually tie all of that together and make a big mosaic. So these are many of these parts of the sky with the Southern Cross. Professor Wout already showed this as well, where we overlap the radio telescope image from MeerKAT. And the nice thing is that if we just look at the opticals, and now this is just the bottom part, this is just the optical. And then if I put on the radio as well, you see a completely different sky. And this is the reason why we do this. Because you see different signals, different physical processes between the optical and the radio. And so all of a sudden, all this structure here with all these nebulae and supernova remnants, they are not visible in the optical, but in the radio they immediately stand out. And so you get this multiple view of the universe. And some of the highlights that we've been doing with this collaboration between MeerKAT and MeerKAT. And these are gamma ray bursts. These are very short duration flashes of gamma rays, as the name says. So we get a signal from telescopes in orbit, and then we actually go and point our MeerKAT telescope to this. And if it's interesting enough, we also put the MeerKAT telescope on it slightly later. And that's because in these systems, the radio signal comes out later. And so here's one that we found by scanning a large part of the sky. So every little square is one of the pointings of MeerKAT. And we found it, and this is for the astronomers in the room, this is 22nd magnitude, which is quite amazing to actually do this with a 60 centimeter telescope. But we found this tiny little speck of light, which is the optical light coming out of this collapse of a very massive star that then actually sends out all these relativistic jets. A very nice collaboration with MeerKAT was a different one that happened in 2021, where we were with MeerKAT on sky 15 minutes after the event happened. So we immediately react, we get data 15 minutes later. And then it turned out that we also looked at this with the MeerKAT radio array and with ALMA in Chile. And we see behavior, this behavior where it's becoming sort of, this is brightness versus time. So it's becoming fainter. This is something that we've known for 30 years. When we found the first one, actually we found the first one 30 years ago of these. And this is quite standard. But then we look in the radio, and then all of a sudden, in, again, brightness against time, we see that they become brighter over time and they have these bumps. This is completely ununderstood. And now, so 30 years later, we find new things in this collaboration between optical and radio. So this is a nice example by my student Simon de Wet, who just obtained his PhD at UCT. Another example is from the MeerKAT program of these systems where there's a black hole. There's one famous one called GX339-4, sort of the cornerstone object from the MeerKAT project. And the MeerKAT project looked at this with the MeerKAT radio array for 5 years. So now we're talking years here. 5 years in a row, and we also observed that with the MeerKAT telescope for those 5 years. There's gaps here because we can't observe during the day, and the radio telescopes can. That's a nice advantage that radio has. But then when we look in the optical colors, which is a nice thing about MeerKAT that we can do this, we see that the color, which is now shown here on the horizontal axis versus the brightness, the color stays more or less constant as this thing goes up and down through episodes of more and less accretion, except when it's bright in the radio, then it also becomes very red in the optical. And we think that this is the radio jet actually shining in the optical, with synchrotron radio emission in the optical. Then the third brief example is on these fast radio bursts, really enigmatic. So these are flashes of about 10 milliseconds. So we go from minutes to years, and now we go back to milliseconds, thousands of a second, that flash very briefly in the radio. And we have basically no idea what they are. They come from somewhere in the universe. They're probably connected to neutron stars, but there's no really strong evidence for that yet. And so one key of finding out what's going on is to try and find them in the optical. But of course, if your signal only lasts for 10 milliseconds, you'll always be too late if you then have to go and point a different telescope. So now we're pointing at the same time. And so this particular burst, fast radio burst 230808, is when we were actually co-observing with with MeerKAT and MeerKAT. And my student Kira Hanmer is analyzing this data. We were very unlucky because in the optical you take an image, then you have to download the data. You take a new image, you download the data. The fast radio bursts happen during one of these downloads, and they take about 10 seconds. So actually 3.6 seconds after the fast radio burst arrived, we started a new exposure. We didn't see anything in that, so we still don't know if there was a very brief flash in the optical, but this is by far the strictest limit that we have so far. So those were nice examples of the actual science that we do in this collaboration. Now looking forward, last slide. we really need those multiple facilities. And now looking at the southern part of the world, we are of course here, where we have MeerKAT, Meerlicht, the Atlas, and the SAO and SOL telescopes, SKA being built. We saw a lot of north-south between the Netherlands and South Africa, but the Netherlands is also part of ESO, the European Southern Observatory. And as of January, I have a new hat on as well as being part of the ESO Council. So there's a nice opportunity to also look east-west, because ESO has its facilities in Chile. Already there is the ESO VLT, being built is the ELT, and also there's the ALMA submillimeter dish. The Black Jam sister telescopes to Meerlicht are there. So there's interesting opportunities to actually do this east-west as well. And of course, South Africa is also part of the LSST that is currently being built, which is also very interesting for transient science. So looking forward, I think that part of this collaboration between the Netherlands and South Africa could not just be north-south, but also east-west. Also going back to the other side of the world, to Australia, because this is now becoming a 24/7 industry, to find these transients and study them, because some of them are very fast. So you really, within a day, you have to follow up. And of course, the Earth rotates so that the sky becomes visible first in Australia, then in South Africa, then in Chile, and then again in Australia. And so an interesting initiative is, of course, also the AMT, already mentioned by Adrian Tiplady, being built also by Radboud, but also a new initiative is the Time Domain Telescope for a possible project after the ESO ELT, and maybe an outrigger station of that could be in Africa. So lots of opportunities, but also great science being done already with the facilities that we've been able to put in and make very nice scientific use of. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Groot, for this really very interesting presentation on the Meerlicht project, and I mean particularly its contributions to multi-wavelength astronomy and also global collaboration. So we have our final speaker for this segment, which is Ms. Saskia Mathausen, who's responsible for astronomy at the Dutch Research Council. And she has been involved in bilateral collaboration between South Africa and the Netherlands since 2012. And she will talk about the role of research councils and governments in furthering bilateral collaboration. And she is online.
Yes, thank you very much, Shaletta. Can you hear me well there? Okay, I can't see you in Teams when I'm presenting, so I just assume things go well. First of all, let me thank you very much for the invitation and apologize for not being with you today. Unfortunately, I can't join you because we have our National Astronomy Town Hall meeting exactly today, which is very unfortunate because I missed the opportunity to talk to all of you. I'm also very happy to learn that after today's presentation, I don't have to add.
Saskia, we're just trying to fix the sound. We cannot hear you yet.
Okay.
She's supposed to come through on my Teams, yeah.
Apologies, Saskia. Ooh, and audience.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
We're still trying to fix the sound on this side.
Okay.
Jesus, move this thing. Alrighty. She's still. Okay, when do you want to come back then? Yeah. So, should we come back? From the it's now 10:45. 10:50. Okay. Colleagues, while we solve this issue with the sound online, I think we'll go to our coffee break now, and then we'll have Saskia after the coffee break and then the panel session, instead of us sitting and waiting for this to be fixed. So let's take the coffee break now, and then we'll see each other at 10:50. 10:50. Okay, thanks so much, everyone.
Yes, yes. We'll just do a quick, she's doing it. We'll do a quick test with her now.
Thanks so much.
Okay, but so now you already have your sound there, né?
One, two, one, two. 1, 2. Good day, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, great stuff. Yeah. Sorry about the technical glitch. We are back online now.
Perfect. Thank you very much for solving.
All right. Yeah, so they just took a small comfort break. They should be coming back to you just now.
Okay, perfect. We start again at 10:50, right?
Testing. Testing. Can you still hear me? All right, let's do just one final test. Just say something to me.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Happiness.
Perfect. Thank you.
One, two, one, two. All right. Push up. Yeah,
That's okay. I assume you need it. It's fine. Yeah, I know. I want to one day. I just said to people that it's going to look very weird if nobody is going to see us.
Yeah, I always have the same problem.
Also, somewhere my days. Is he big for you? I'm sure. Let's just go from one meeting to another.
Colleagues, if we can please take our places, we're about to start with the second part of our session. Thank you. You're welcome to grab snacks in between in the back, but if, for now we can just please all get our seats so we can start the session. Thank you. Thanks so much, colleagues. So we're starting the session. There was a slight change in plan. We have one talk from the previous session left. So we're going to start with this. And I'll just introduce our speaker again, Ms. Saskia Mathausen. She's responsible for astronomy at the Dutch Research Council and has been involved in bilateral collaboration between South Africa and the Netherlands since 2012. She will talk about the role of research councils and governments in furthering bilateral collaboration. So let us welcome Ms. Mathausen, and she's online. Hopefully we can hear her now. Saskia, maybe you can just say something?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Wonderful, we can hear you now. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks so much for inviting me. And let me start with apologizing for not being there in person today. I know that the best part of the meetings are usually the coffee breaks, and I'm really sorry to miss them because I would love to see all my friends again in South Africa. Unfortunately, exactly today is also the day that we have our National Astronomy Town Hall meeting, and I will need to be there as well today, so that kept me from traveling. Nevertheless, we already heard quite a few speakers today, and I think already many of them highlighted the importance of research councils and governments in the collaboration. And if we look at the mission of research councils like NWO, it's not just about funding research, because if you look at our strategic plan, like our building blocks are healthy research cultures and coherent research agendas and unimpeded collaboration, in addition to our mission to fund scientific research. Let me just start. The history overview that we received today started with VLBI, but also since the involvement of Hartenbeestuk in the EVN, there was participation in JIVE later on, and exactly these agreements, they have been signed, the MOUs by the NRF in 2012 for the first time, and there was of course involvement in the ministries as well when the JIVE ERIC has been established. So there is a clear role for governments and funding agencies in preparing agreements that facilitate collaboration. But if we look at collaboration, actually the elements of successful collaboration it's not something that funding agencies can realize on their own. Everything starts with a shared goal, and what we like to stress is that mutual interest and mutual benefit is crucial for any collaboration. And it started with VLBI, and I've included some old pictures of LOFAR and CAT7, just to express that our collaboration is not only when facilities have been built and are fully operational, but that we have been extensively collaborating both on science and on technology, and that especially after all the presentations today, I think we are all convinced about this shared goal. But collaboration doesn't happen without people, and especially researchers. We learned from Patrick's talk that researchers, friends in science, have been collaborating for over 100 years, and this is still going on today, and this is still the most important aspect of every collaboration, the individual collaboration and the links. And this is true for scientists, but it's also true for funding agencies and governments. For me personally, my involvement in collaboration with South Africa started formally in 2012, but actually in 2011. And what happened was that a person that was at that time in Brussels, DG Dan, he visited us at NWO. And of course, we were already heavily involved in discussions on radio astronomy and on the SKA, etc., etc. But it was actually Dan who told us, like, we have to make more of our collaboration because there are so many opportunities, and not only with what is happening natural, but also with what we can gain if we put some added value in it. And after Dan visited us, he came back a couple of months later, and basically I just checked the summary of that meeting. And we agreed on many things there, amongst others, the collaboration in JIVE, but also to establish the NWO and NRF program that has been mentioned before, but also public-private partnerships on green supercomputing and data challenges together with IBM, and a collaboration also on the Office of Astronomy for Development. So it was actually that part of the collaboration, people coming to us, starting to talk and think strategically, like what is needed more, that made things happen. And it was also a bit later at my first visit to South Africa in 2012, when we concluded a number of agreements, that I first met Takalani. And since then, we've been catching up regularly, as you can see in this picture, which was just at a conference in Valencia where we bumped into each other. So people are essential. And a third element is the long-term embedding and the structure, and that refers to the agreements that I mentioned before. And in this slide, you see a couple of pictures. One of them was taken at the Dutch embassy, the one at the left, at our visit in 2012, where we actually concluded a number of these agreements. So about the role of research councils and governments. Our role is about facilitating. And it's not just about signing agreements or providing funding. I mean, the main role that researchers look at us as a funding agency is, of course, the cash machine, which is an essential function. But there is more to that. There's also an important element in engaging and coordinating. And I think that's exactly what we've been doing in this collaboration with South Africa. It's not just about research communities. It's not just about funding agencies. It's not just about governments, but it's about connecting all these elements in a more strategic way. And I think this community aspect, making sure that we're working together at all levels, is what really makes collaboration sustainable. So I mentioned agreements that were concluded, and I think the NWO-NRF program that was mentioned before was so successful because we didn't just sign an agreement, open a call, and waited for things to happen, but we actually tried to coordinate. We invited Dutch researchers to an astronomy town hall meeting in South Africa, and later on organized a workshop where we established working groups on topics of common interest, and where we tried to involve research groups and networks in both countries. And I think it's exactly this part of community building and of bringing groups of people together on both sides that result in a collaboration that is more than just the original friends where it started with. It's groups and networks together. Last summer, we were happy to have Takalani visit the Netherlands, and we organized a small meeting where we asked researchers just to inform us on what they were doing in the collaborations. And Dutch and South African scientists, they stood up and they just gave short pitches about what was happening. And I think both of us, we were very much surprised to see how many individual initiatives do exist and how broad this collaboration really is. And of course, if you look at future challenges and opportunities, I think one of the main challenges is to maintain the coordinated approach, because if you see the many activities that are popping up, it becomes harder to be aware of everything that's going on. And my opinion is that the coordinated approach is needed to ensure that everyone is informed well, and that we make maximal benefit from all these collaborations to ensure that we use the synergies. One of the opportunities is also widening the collaboration. If you see at the list of South African universities that is involved in astronomy is growing, as it is in African countries. There are many opportunities to broaden our collaborations. And of course, there are the new developments, not only scientific and technical, but also societal. Of course, the data-related challenges, they produce new opportunities, but also challenges in educating the next generation in a sustainable way, but also the sustainable research in general, sustainable in terms of people, but also sustainable in terms of environmental impact. And it's also all these new things that pop up, adapting to developments that will create the opportunities of the future. And as I mentioned, the people are key, and I'm really happy to hear all the exciting plans. And I know that researchers in South Africa and the Netherlands are already preparing next steps and discuss them with us. And I think my main message is, like, research councils are basically there to facilitate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Saskia, for shedding light on the invaluable role of research councils and the impact on the success of collaborative astronomy projects. This then now brings us to the end of session 1, and I'll now hand over to my colleague Berto from the Dutch Embassy for the panel discussions. And then I have some good news. Please don't disturb the others, but I believe there's coffee in the back now. So, Berto, over to you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, Aleta, for introducing the coffee and me. My name is Berto Boscha, Education and Science Counselor at the Embassy of the Netherlands here in Pretoria. We are not only in Pretoria, we also have a consulate in Cape Town, so we are widespread over South Africa. And I think South Africa is a very important partner in science, in education for the Netherlands for many, many years already, and especially in astronomy, as we saw today. Over 200 years of collaboration, but we only celebrate over 20 years. So it makes me want to start singing. But I don't know a song that we can sing about celebrating over 20 or 200 years of collaboration in astronomy. So if one of you has an idea, please come forward at the end and start singing here from this spot. We've listened to a sort of more political reflection by Deputy Director General Daan du Toit this morning, by our Excellency Ambassador Miss Dornemaert from the Embassy of the Netherlands, that represents my office. And after that, we dived into the deep, more in-depth reflections on how did it start, what was actually more the technical approach that we took in the different parts of the world, how did it come together, and what did it bring us. And it's good to dive a bit deeper in what are we doing at the moment with astronomy research, and what can it bring us for the future as well. In the research as science, but also in the impact for local communities. And for that, we have different speakers that I will invite to take a seat here in front. And we will ask the different speakers a few questions to tell a bit about how do we do it nowadays and how will we do it in the future. And it is all about bright minds that start working maybe for fun in astronomy, because fun is a very important aspect of astronomy, but the fun creates a wide and open bright mind. We've learned that in August during the huge conference that took place here in Cape Town, and I see Kevin Govender in the back. Congratulations on the successful conference that you hosted in Cape Town, which brought astronomy to the African continent and also created new openings for widening astronomy on the African continent. As we learned this morning again, how important it is to fill the blank spaces on the African continent to have a better vision on the skies as well. The bright minds don't stick only in the astronomy sectors, they also go out to banking, data mining, chemical engineering, and so on and so on. So it's also a sector that creates a lot of bright talents for other sectors. And last week we had a policy dialogue between South Africa and the Netherlands on the gap between education and labor market. And this is a nice example, I think, where smart minds find a way in science, in astronomy, but then also find a way into the labor markets that need people with critical skills, which are hard to find. So astronomy colleagues, thank you very much for providing a lot of high-skilled people to other sectors as well. And many innovations are offspring of that. For health sciences, for example, the gaming industry, forecasting instruments, data processing and analyzing, many applications can be used. And on top of that, we will speak about tourism. Astrotourism is a new business growing in South Africa. It can be used for psychological techniques, I've learned in August in Cape Town. It's also an art that can be used by artisans or artists. So it creates a lot of innovation and inspiration for many people. So it's not only about science that we will talk today, but we will mainly focus on science. I will start inviting the panelists, and first is the gentleman here in front, Mr. Takalani Nemangani. He is the Chief Director Astronomy for the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation here in South Africa. And he played a role in coordinating and strengthening bilateral astronomy partnerships between South Africa and the Netherlands for over the past 15 years. So we celebrate 15, 20, maybe 25, I saw in one of the slides, and over 200 years of collaboration. You can come forward. Thank you very much. Then the next panelist to invite is my ambassador, the ambassador for the Netherlands, Ms. Joanne Doornwaard. She was introduced this morning already as the energetic people bringer that brings people together and strengthens the bilateral ties by doing so. So please be welcome. Then we have Dr. Rosalind Skelton. She is Acting Managing Director of NRF South African Astronomical Observatory. And she has done quite some important work. She was head of research for SARAO between 2023 and 2024, and she is also a salt astronomer from 2016 up till now. So welcome to the front. Then we have Ms. Poncho Maruping. She is Managing Director at the South African Radio Astronomy Observatory. And she is former chairperson of the South African Council for Space Affairs and a former chair of the Science and Technical Subcommittee of the United Nations on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space between 2018 and 2020. And she is the Chief Director for Space Science and Technology at the Department of Science and Technology, where she spearheaded the establishment of the South African National Space Agency. Welcome. And as you see now, we have slightly more females, which also makes me happy, because science is not only about males like it was in the past, maybe especially in our beliefs, but it's also a lot to do about females. But our last speaker is a male, Mr. Thijs Geurts. He is Head of International Relations at the SKA Observatory, and he has done a lot of relevant work as well. He, for example, started at the Dutch Ministry for Culture, Education, Culture and Science in The Hague between 2003 and 2019. And there he worked on topics like bilateral science cooperation between South Africa, China and Brazil, and European scientific cooperation with the European Commission and the Framework Program. In 2012 till 2013, he had a secondment at NWO, so he also knows a lot about the important role of the research councils. There he worked on bilateral cooperation between South Africa and the Netherlands. But as you can imagine, astronomy is the fun option, so why not transfer to SKA directly? So Tess, welcome here in the front. And I keep reminding you of coming up with a song at the end, so keep that in mind. Let's start with Mr. Takalani Nemangani, because we have a few questions for you. And I think the first to start with is, how does South Africa's presidential PhD program support human capital development? Like I mentioned shortly with the policy dialogue on the gap between education and labor market, and how can the Netherlands further contribute to this initiative?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I think the presidential PhD program is really a very exciting new initiative that the president of the country has mandated our department to take a lead in this area so that we can use it to build human capital, particularly PhD programs, because we realize that as part of the National Development Plan 2030, we are not yet reaching our target, of producing enough PhDs, and so we've been I've been engaging with the NRF already, and my colleagues at the department are responsible for this initiative that we want to have astronomy also, and I think they've already agreed now in principle. And then the idea now is that we are going to use, NASP. We've got this bursary program called the National, Astronomy and Space Science Program, which we've celebrated 20 years of that bursary program. I think this was the first bursary program in astronomy that was introduced here in South Africa, because you can imagine at the time, we hardly had any black astronomers in South Africa, and even African astronomers. So this was the first intervention at the time, and to produce, sort of new generation of astronomers, black astronomers, both in South Africa and in Africa. And many of those in Africa have gone back to their countries. But we've always run it as a sort of a master's and honors and master's program. So the idea now is that the PhD presidential program gives us an opportunity to graduate NASP from a master's to a PhD program, because it's already a network of universities. I think there's 3 nodes and there's 9 participating institutions. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity that we can then, because we already working with quite a number of universities in the Netherlands already. There's already students that are studying in the Netherlands, South African students, and there's a lot of exchange programs. For instance, University of Stellenbosch already established a joint PhD program in computational astrophysics between Stellenbosch University and Groningen University. So I think we can build on some of those aspects so that we can use, where we can then send our South African students to universities in the Netherlands, and maybe we explore ways of joint supervision and so on. And of course, I mean, we also have the SKA bursary program that is already training PhD students. Even there, we can still find ways of complementing this as well, in building that collaboration, strengthening collaboration between the Netherlands, and South Africa. So I think we're no longer just talking about the PhD program now. I think as we talked about it during the General Assembly in Cape Town, but after that we've actually made further progress in terms of engaging with the NRF, and we've agreed in principle that we're going to pilot NASP. I think we've been in discussions with the NASP committee chaired by Ross here and other stakeholders that I think we should really take advantage of this opportunity, to use it to further, strengthen our collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for creating a bridge for me as well, because you already mentioned that it was not that common to have black students or researchers active in the astronomy sector, but nowadays with the growing expertise in astronomy, in optical and in infrared astronomy, especially in South Africa, I think there's new opportunities and chances as well. And maybe as a question to you, Dr. Rosalind, what are the main opportunities for collaboration with the Netherlands in this field, also to enhance the engagement of black South Africans or maybe Africans in general? And another question, how can we jointly contribute to addressing global challenges by doing so through optical and multi-wavelength astronomy?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I think we've already heard quite a bit this morning about some of the exciting areas of science where there's potential for expanding on our collaborations and building on what we have already. So maybe I'll just touch on a few of those areas where obtaining optical and near-infrared data is very important to really learn as much as possible across the whole spectrum of light that we receive, not just one band, but the whole spectrum. And then talk a little bit about some of the other areas, the software development, the technology development, that are also very important areas for collaboration. So in terms of the key science areas for the future, I think the transient astronomy that Paul Groot talked about earlier is a very important one. And what we're doing at SAO is trying to connect up our telescopes into what we call the intelligent observatory, or so a network of telescopes that can respond automatically using artificial intelligence and software tools to choose the most appropriate telescope and instrument for the particular event that you've discovered. So these are all sorts of changing phenomena, things that change in brightness or appear and then disappear. Some of them are detected in the radio bands, and there'll be many of them detected by the SKA and MeerKAT. Others from the gravitational wave observatories. And so once those events are detected, you need to follow them up and really learn more about what's going on. And the optical telescopes are key for that. So I think there's great potential for Dutch-South African collaboration in that area in particular. Another exciting area is the exoplanet field. And here the Netherlands has participation in ESA big missions, Plato and Ariel coming up in the next few years. And SALT, our Southern African Large Telescope, which is our flagship telescope here in South Africa, is building what we call a laser frequency comb that will detect the tiny wobbles of stars caused by planets moving around them. And so there we can collaborate both on the technologies that you need to find these exoplanets, but also on the science that will be done. So those are just a couple of the areas where I think we need to build on our collaborations. In terms of addressing the global challenges, I think astronomy has potential for spinning off technologies that will be useful for society more broadly, particularly with climate change and these kind of global challenges. Some of the detector technology that we're developing for optical astronomy, the fiber spectroscopy, those things will be able to be used in satellites for remote sensing and that kind of thing. So I think we can work closely with our Dutch colleagues on instrumentation and technology development and the software that we need for astronomy, the big data challenges that will then also impact on society, as well as the astrotourism that we've talked about already.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the other speakers, let me go back to Mr. Takalani Nemangani first to ask you a bit more about the new national multi-wavelength strategy that is being developed. It's currently drafted for South Africa, and how does it aim to enhance that international collaboration that you also speak about? And what opportunities do you see for the Netherlands and South Africa?
Yeah, so we are in the process of renewing ourselves for the next decade through this, multi-wavelength astronomy strategy that's kinds of ends, soon, and then and also kind of in line with our decadal implementation of our decadal plan for South Africa. So we have several working groups. It's a community sort of driven process whereby we've been getting a lot of inputs from different working groups. Just to give you a sense, these working groups, we're focusing on very specific scientific topics that, we started by a kind of a survey so that people can tell us what they see as a key scientific topics that we should focus on. And then, of course, over and above that, we have working groups on, for instance, science engagement and instrumentation, engineering, and so on. So I think it really provides an opportunity. I think our engagement with you is coming at the right time because we are in the process whereby, as part of the outcomes here and our engagements, hopefully can find, meaning there and space. So I think really is a very opportune time because as part of that strategy, international partnerships is one of the elements. And I think for me, the South Africa-Dutch partnership has been one of the most successful, most productive bilateral partnerships that we have had. If I look at my own engagements with other countries, I think I've had much more engagements with colleagues from Netherlands than any other of our, even from SKA member countries, maybe apart from, maybe with the exception maybe of the UK, but I think just in terms of the number of visits we have had from Netherlands and our visits to Netherlands over the years shows that, it's a very dynamic partnership that we, so I would say really most of the things that we're discussing here are very much relevant for that strategy. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And it sounds like that we have something to celebrate because you speak about a lot of partnerships and visits. I think that's an important way of how we do it. We do it online as well, of course, but those visits every now and then make it more in person, more in depth, and that keeps the bilateral strength, I think. Maybe the next speaker, Ambassador Quen Doornemaat. You are, as ambassador, of course, seen as a person to bring countries together, speak in a diplomatic way between countries on national government level. But I noticed that you also visited an event around Khoisan and how they perceive indigenous cosmology. And I see a link there with, for example, SKA. How do you see your role for the bilateral, the diplomatic scene, but also in the light of this, the visit that you brought, and how does it bring the nations or maybe the communities together?
Okay, that's a difficult one. Where do I start? Yes, I've started here in the last year, and the Dutch, we have a history here. I mean, we cannot deny that. And indeed, a government, a king who apologized for their past. So indeed, we are visited by also local communities that come forward to us, the Khoi in the Sun. And that made me realize, okay, what happened, and to learn more about these people, to hear their stories. And then earlier this year, Dan du Toit invited us, a group of ambassadors, to visit the SKA observatory. And there we were welcomed by the local community. And there was a class of children. And every time it was stressed that, I mean, the space there was an historical place. And I found it very touching to see that, and not just touching, very, very positive. So, I mean, we had the local food. The children were very active, involved in programs that they had at the schools. I think it's 70 kilometers away from the SKA, but I mean, still involved what's going on. Local communities involved in the construction, but they told me also about nature. I mean, to bring it back, the environment there. that also from biodiversity, what's growing there. So you have all these big, but also a lot of other things are happening there. So it really was very special to see that, and also to hear that elsewhere in the world, when you don't cooperate with local communities, then it can be quite difficult. So I thought it's very positive what South Africa is doing there. And then we have a cultural program within our embassy where we do a lot of things. But I mean, one of the programs is indeed to connect people. And then we had during Heritage Month earlier this year, we had a beautiful program. It was called Cosmic Echoes with an exhibition. And it was beautiful to have the old stories, the traditional stories of the local people living there, how they deal with the universe, and having that visualized by artists, what it meant, and then having the scientists together. It was just beautiful to connect that. And I think that's very important if you look to the future, because I mean, what we have as science here, it's built upon experiences from that time. And I think that was a beautiful thing. So they say the universe speaks in a soft language that the ancients understood. And the heart of the artist perceives those echoes and shares it with the world. And to involve already the youth and the children in that sense. I thought it was very beautiful. And I mean, as an embassy, we do a lot of things. And so we work on the scientific side, but I think there's also a side that we like to promote and to acknowledge. To make things sustainable, and also to see local communities have not the profit, but the advantages that such a project can bring to them with schooling, and also those young children that are sitting there building blocks and learning about the universe. I mean, that will be the next scientist on your project, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Another speaker that knows a lot about the local impact of these kind of big projects, science projects, is Ms. Poncho Marupi. And for you, Ms. Poncho, the question is, how has radio astronomy impacted local communities in South Africa, especially in the rural areas near observatories like MeerKAT? And what strategies can we enhance to benefit for the local people and communities to benefit more from these large-scale projects, such as the SKA?
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. I think that the fact that we operate in these communities is important, that they see us as partners rather than imposters. And I think one way of looking at it is really not to be extractive about the approach. So the way mines used to operate is they take whatever is of value to them and leave a ghost town. So I think that the way this project was approached is really to look at a lot of the community development initiatives, starting with primarily capacity building. I think education will probably have the most lasting impact on a community like that. We now have young people who we supported from high school to university, and some of these young people are going to start working, going back to their communities, being able to become role models for other children in the community. I think that's the one aspect I feel like will have a bigger impact. Capacity building programs are not even just focused on university. We have a schools program that supports having maths and science teachers at the high school to ensure that they get good marks in high school, and so that we can then, once they've qualified for university, then we can support them to go to university. In fact, in the beginning, we used to focus only on STEM support, but now we've actually decided that if someone from that community wants to be a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, that we will support, because the likelihood is that they will go back to that community and enhance, the community there. The other areas that we looked at is, we need to maintain the telescope. So Being able to hire electricians and technicians makes it a little easier if you can hire them from that community. So other aspect of capacity building includes building the skills that we need anyway in the observatory, so that they can, become part of our teams going forward. And then the other area we looked at was on local business development. So we try as much as possible procure from that community. But not only that, because we recognize the potential for some of the small businesses to be involved in the big projects that we have on site. We trained them, make sure that they understand how to cost, how to draft bill of materials, what equipment you would need to do a certain type of work, registered, so that now when the SK, for instance, started construction on site, they were able to use those local businesses as subcontractors. And therefore they see this as part of us being part of the community in that way. And of course, one of the things that we, to some extent, maybe take for granted is, we've helped to, for instance, build the power infrastructure to ensure that the site has electricity. And that has also enabled the town to have reliable reliable when it can be, reliable electricity. And not only that, we need to move large amounts of data. So of course, we have to make sure that the community also has access to Wi-Fi and those services, because we can't be using their backyard and not be, at least give them part of the type of services we would expect in a developed town. And then the other thing is really just around supporting the cultural heritage. You mentioned earlier, or someone mentioned the astrotourism. So we worked with the Department of Tourism and piloted a program where we trained young people from the town to do astrotourism, and that doesn't include only include astronomy, but also just incorporating the cultural heritage into that. So now when visitors come into town, they're able to, learn about the town, it's the area itself, but also learn about how it connects to the astronomy that we are doing on the site. So I think that there are really multiple ways that you can approach this and make sure that you really have a lasting impact. I mean, that telescope is meant to operate for 50 years. So I tell the learners at the high school, their children would still be able to work for the observatory. That's how long we plan to be there. And I think that's comforting, to know that when we are done, we're just going to go away. And, astronomy facilities tend to last longer than what they're designed for. So I'm sure it's actually going to be beyond the 50 years. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we dive from stargazing to what does it mean for local communities, but we can also make it bigger again. That's the fun about astronomy, I think, as well. So in this month of December in Pretoria, we have a street, Lolly Street it's called, and there's a lot of lights in all the big houses that are there. And people like to drive around that street to watch all the lights. So that's how close the lights, the stars can come to us. But we can also zoom out again and watch the bigger skies and the stars. And maybe in that regard, a question for you, Mr. Thijs Geurts, because in your previous roles, you have worked for the national government. Now you represent a multilateral organization. So how do you perceive the benefits, or how do you work and reflect on the bilateral versus the multilateral cooperation? Because we focus today, of course, on the bilateral cooperation between South Africa and the Netherlands, but we are part in SKA at least of the collaboration between many countries. How do you look at it, and how do you reflect on it?
Thank you for that question, and thank you for inviting me here. It's wonderful to celebrate 20 years of fruits of bilateral collaboration. As you mentioned, I spent a number of years at the Ministry of Education and Science and played a humble role in setting up those visits between South Africa and the Netherlands to establish that bilateral collaboration. So, and just to say, het is ook heel erg leuk om een keer op een conferentie te zijn en weer een keer Nederlands te kunnen praten. On your question, so we're celebrating bilateral collaboration, and it's wonderful to hear about the fruits of the past 20 years, and I truly hope that this will continue for many decades from now on. But I do think it's fair to say that every project that was mentioned today, and every institute and university involved, in a sense, has a multinational aspect to it, right? Science has changed so much and it has become so much more international in the past decades with, of course, the revolutions in transport. It becomes way easier to travel. And because of the internet, of course, the interconnectedness between people is just much better. So I would argue that even within bilateral collaboration, this international, multinational aspect is very present. So from my perspective, having dealt with bilateral and now with multilateral collaboration, I would say that it's a bit easier to establish bilateral collaboration. There's only two parties involved. There's less hassle, let's say. When I look at the SKA, it takes a lot of time to get to the point where we were. I was just in another session explaining that the journey that we've made to come to this point took us 35 years. So the first ideas about establishing an SKA was in the beginning of the 90s. Bilateral collaboration works a lot faster. So I think it's fair to say that the two types of collaboration really should coexist. If you want to take action fast and do it on a particular scope, go with bilateral collaboration. But if you want to aim for building a large research infrastructure that just takes a lot of money, right? Perhaps the multilateral way is the way to go.
It makes me think of an African proverb, actually, what you say. And it sounds like this. If you want to go fast, go bilateral. If you want to go far, go multilateral.
There you go.
So maybe that's the new way of saying that proverb. We've heard all the speakers here in front now, but you are also part of this room, so I consider you all as speakers. So my next question is for Mr. Geurts again, but I also see that Kevin Governor has joined us, and we know that he had a session earlier this morning on the same topic, but then with an African perspective. So my next question is first to Mr. Geurts and then also to you, Kevin, if that's okay. Because thinking about the multilateral angle, the European Commission and its focus on the African continent comes to mind, of course. So do you see a role for the European Commission here that complements the bilateral collaboration between South Africa and the Netherlands? And then the follow-up question I would like to ask to Mr. Geurts, but also to you. How do you see that multilateral collaboration or strengthening of collaborations also play a role in the African continent and the collaborations in Africa?
Yeah, I think it's very important. If you look at the past, and looking only at the SKA project, the European Commission and the funding that they provided has been absolutely critical, right? When you look at the design phase and the preparatory phase, almost 20 million euros was invested by the European Commission to make all of that possible. So just to say that the efforts by the Commission and its focus on the African continent has been absolutely crucial. If you look at the situation today, and I think your visit together with the other EU ambassador speaks to this fact, the European Commission is very much interested in the African continent as a whole, in South Africa and the SKA project in particular. It was only last week that the DG RTD, Marc Lemaitre, visited South Africa and was able to visit the site. So it speaks to the fact that they're very much involved. And maybe to look to the future, I'm absolutely sure that the Commission will remain their focus on the African continent. Will bring lots of opportunities for funding. Of course, there's the new framework now being negotiated and coming up, and I'm sure it will not only fund cooperation possibilities, but we'll also have that focus on the African continent. So it's definitely important. Yes.
Thanks very much. I think I can summarize it like this. I think South Africa's role on the African continent has been, while growing South African astronomy and astronomy in the country, we've brought on board the rest of the continent. And you referred to the General Assembly that we had in August. That was really an example where the South African government embraced the fact that, we are part of Africa. We are one of the few countries on the continent that actually has Africa in its name. But many people look at South Africa as, South Africa is sort of big brother or trying to dominate in the African continent. But I think what we managed to achieve through the African Astronomical Society and through sort of the growth of astronomy in Africa towards this General Assembly was to say that let's work together and let's grow together. So any opportunities that South Africa has and any doors that South Africa opens, with Europe, with the US, with other parts of the world, we want to bring Africa along. And I think Taklani has actually been a champion for astronomy in Africa through support for the African Astronomical Society and the ongoing efforts. And some of our other colleagues here as well that have worked with the African Astronomical Society, it gives a platform where if in our conversations through a bilateral partnership like South Africa, Netherlands, we say, okay, what can we do for the other African continent? South Africa knows the people, knows the contacts, has the relationships where we can say, here are the opportunities to stimulate growth and development, but also we can talk to the communities to say, here are the opportunities, for scholarships, for other and other collaborations.
Thank you. Well, I'll pose a question to my ambassador again. I give you the time to think of questions on your side. So if you have a question, please raise your hand after the answer of my ambassador. And then there is a mic already at Kevin's table, but then there's also space for your questions or remarks. More than welcome. But Ambassador, you actually are one of the persons that I know that enjoyed the astrotourism, because you were invited by group leader Dan du Toit. And he was a perfect tourist leader, I think, in bringing the group of tourists from the ambassador side here to the spot. How was it to visit that site, and how do you perceive the future of astrotourism?
Well, if you call that also astrotourism, but okay, this was a duty trip. It started like that, and it started indeed with all kinds of small planes going there, making a stopover in Kimberley to refuel. So it was really like an adventure. And then arriving there, having like, how many ambassadors did we have? Like 16 or something, that we had to leave our phones right at the entrance. Having ambassadors without their phones for the whole day, that was really something. So we had to leave our phones in the lockers there. So that was already impressive that they made us do that. And then being received there to realize where we were, I thought that was very special. And then going around, so getting the explanation and going around in these huge structures. Very impressive. And then, and I'm not an astronomist. And over there I had to hear from Dan that actually that the Dutch had such a role. I know Dingelo. I grew up, we went there with class, I think, with school, but that we have such a history, I didn't know. So I had to learn that here. So having to be there, to go around on that SKA observatory, to drive around and see these huge, immense discs, and to have that explained in language that we could understand. Also, just simple diplomats who talk about politics and not about these kind of stuff. So it was very interesting. And then going back, so then we had these planes waiting for us to take us back to Pretoria. And then we had to wait. I said, okay, it's time to go. No, we have to wait. So why? No, because they have to shift the discs, have to go I felt like it was a movie, 007 or something like that. So you're standing there on the airport, and then all these discs suddenly, all at the same time, they just moved the other way, and then we were ready to go. I mean, I felt like, okay, you just push a button and all these discs are in outer space just for having these ambassadors leaving the site. So yeah, it was an interesting visit, and it made us talk a lot about what was happening there and to see how the countries that were represented there, to see how we contribute. But also to realize that it's really in that space, but actually the scientists are somewhere else behind their computer. I mean, they're not there. They're not supposed to be there because otherwise you interfere in whatever is happening there. So I learned a lot, and to see how that connects again with Europe, with Australia. So you call that astrotourism, but I mean, for me, astrotourism is something else. It's being on a hill and having these stars and somebody explain you. Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
Maybe we can receive your postcard later then. Is there a question in the audience, in the room? Remark? Then this is your time and your moment.
I wanted to add something to
Go ahead.
Kevin said earlier. So, SARAO through the DSTI's support has actually been funding African students to study astronomy. I think we've had like more than 150 grants now that we've provided, and for masters and PhD. And it's resulted in, some of these individuals going back and creating studying astronomy programs in their own countries. So at the moment, we are also just rolling out a training telescope that's really cheap to make. The price of a coffee machine, and I think the more we can have, well, it depends what type of coffee, right? Okay. So the more we can have, increase the amount of investments that go into that kind of activity. Again, it's a sort of thing that really will just have a complete, a lasting impact on growing the science community in Africa. Astronomers tend to not only stay in astronomy, they do a whole lot of other things. So, invariably, you're going to have a bigger impact in the economy in one way or the other. And I think, so last year, we at the IAU, we signed an agreement with SKO to now start working on increasing, because our focus at the moment is on the African partner countries. And now there's an opportunity to add, more, because there are a lot more African countries that are interested, so we really would be interested to expand that program more. We have a formula, we know it works. It's worked well, it's produced real results. So, just massifying that program would have a bigger impact than starting small independent efforts, I believe.
Thank you. And I think, again, this shows the positivity side of what can come out of astronomy. As you know, scientists are also the people that bring people into balance often. So there's a positivity side, but sometimes also a little bit more negativity. And therefore, I have a question for Thijs, Mr. Gertz, because the geopolitical landscape is changing at the moment. And that also means sometimes that some groups, nations, perceive each other a bit more as hostile. How do you see that affect the collaborations that take place? Will you expect any difficulties there? And maybe also for you, Dr. Rosalind, I surprised you a bit maybe with this question, but in your work, is there anything you notice of these changes in the world? Or is it something that is far away in the political scene and doesn't it affect your work?
Yeah, that's a deep and difficult question. I brought this picture. I'm not sure if it's technically possible to put it up there, but I think it's maybe helpful to show it. Yeah, I mean, like you, I see the world changing, right? And it's becoming a more different place, where maybe a few decades ago, groups, regions, and nations would look at each other with more of an open view, and be willing to cooperate. These days, you tend to see much more suspicion and quite often even a hostile sensation. So definitely the climate for cooperation is not improving, I would say. I don't think it will directly affect immediately the South African-Dutch cooperation, but yeah, I do see the climate changing. So in that sense, it becomes more difficult. It becomes more difficult, but I think international collaboration is more important than ever. And this is why I wanted to show this one. So you see here the first SKO dish that was put in place this summer. And what you see is international collaboration in action. You see the huge dish and the structure made in China. The subreflector on top is made in Spain. There's the indexer that carries the instruments. I'm not an astronomer at all, so Adrian, I hope I'm making some sense here. The indexer is made in Italy. The premises, of course, South Africa. Software that makes the whole thing work is made in many countries like India, also the Netherlands. And it works, right? It's manufactured in all these different places around the world, and it's put together, and it's assembled, and it fits, and it works, and that's amazing. So just to show you that what can be possible when countries decide to join together, even though they have very different backgrounds, overcome the differences, and build something like this. So yeah, I agree. The climate is changing, but I think today international collaboration in that sense, and during these days you will hear this word science diplomacy quite often, I think, and that really speaks to this fact where on a political level tensions might rise, but on a science more neutral level, the relationships can still flourish.
Let me go to Mr. Nemokani first. Sorry.
It's just a follow-up on, maybe just to comment on that point around the geopolitics, just to make the discussion a little bit more interesting, because obviously as South Africa, we work with everyone, and we, I think, try to use that as a bridge to foster, international collaboration. Because I mean, in my recent visit to the Netherlands, when we're visiting, I think at Leiden University, they've got this space research institute. So as they were taking us on a tour, and of course, so we asked something, they says, no, we're no longer allowed to work, for instance, with China on some of the aspects, And I think before I went there, we just had some engagement with China, and coming back, Russia was hosting us for the BRICS Astronomy conference in which we participate. So, so it is a very tricky environment that, particularly from our side, because we have to maneuver. Sometimes we have to be careful, because we try to work with everybody, in the world. We've launched, the minister launched a scholarship program with Palestine, for instance, but at the same time, we, have a very good, cooperation with the US, particularly on SETI and breakthrough listen. So we try to, so it's a very tricky situation that we find ourselves. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about really making sure that, I mean, just like astronomy does not have borders, and astronomy, I mean, Kevin, they were having a slogan that astronomy for a better world. So if we can use astronomy to build bridges, to make contribute to making a better world where we can just work with everyone, in making things better. Thanks.
I think Takalani summed it up nicely, and I was going to refer to you as the expert. But yeah, I think none of us are immune from these challenges. At the South African Astronomical Observatory, for example, we have about 20 telescopes on our plateau. many of them are international partners, or, owned by other countries or in partnership with us. We have a Russian telescope. We have Polish, Korean, Japanese, so very many different international relations, and we also have to manage these relationships and work together. And we're also involved in the BRICS Astronomy Working Group, and yeah, so it's a challenge for all of us. But hopefully, astronomy can bridge these borders and be used to make the world a better place through science diplomacy as well.
Thank you very much. And I see a question in the room.
Sorry, this is a question that is a follow-up to Kevin's comments and also Poncho's comments and a remark you made about bilateral, multilateral. And I was thinking South Africa as being sort of the doorway to the rest of Africa. And maybe I hope Saskia Mattheusen is still online, because this is also a question to NWO. Because I think if we look back at, say, the last more than decade, that bilateral program that we had between NWO and the NRF really facilitated a lot of the developments that we now see the fruits of. And so I was wondering if, I know NWO is sort of rethinking their strategy and moving away from direct bilaterals between countries and more on themes. So I was wondering, and maybe it's a question to Saskia if she's there, if a theme could be, maybe not bilateral, but sort of half multilateral between the Netherlands and Africa, with South Africa as the stepping stone for rolling out these astronomy initiatives more over the African continent, as a way to enable more of these agreements and collaborations on a slightly wider scale than just the Netherlands, South Africa. So I was thinking maybe that's a way forward for, especially towards the SKA era, but also with the engagement of South Africa with the LSST, for instance, and to engage the rest of the continent.
Thank you for that question. And let me check if Saskia is still online and also audible.
I am online. I'm not sure whether you can hear me because I'm in the train by now.
I can hear you and I can hear the train, but please.
Yes. So I think, Paul, what you're mentioning is like we certainly recognize the value of this program, and that's exactly what we discussed in the Netherlands in July when Takalani visited the Netherlands, and we had an exchange with the community about success stories. We also discussed about the broader role of astronomy. So it's not just about the science, it's also about the impact on local communities, about the societal aspects. But it's also about data. And we learned a lot about also all the spin-offs it has to industry, but also to educating the next generation, not only for science, but also for society at large. So certainly, such a program is very attractive and fits very well, I think, in general, between the goals between our two countries. As you already mentioned, like we are also re-establishing our international partnerships and our collaboration programs, and of course, it's unclear at this stage how this will fit in, and in general, like international collaboration, it's always about flexibility, about looking for opportunities, and also about means to organize the funding. And this is something we have to explore further in the future. But yes, I recognize what you say about all the opportunities, and that's the collaboration is more than just lessons and broad impact as well.
Thank you very much, Saskia, for your answer, and also for extending this event to the communities in the Netherlands. Very great to hear. I think my ambassador is holding the mic to say something, or just holding the mic?
I was just holding the mic to pass it on, but I mean, hearing all these about the relationship with all the other countries, the BRICS and all that, I can see that also being based here in South Africa, the challenges to balance all that. I think the Netherlands, we are very multilateral. We really are working internationally, but we learned our lessons in certain instances. I mean, so because there's security issues, so that's why it might be a challenge, but there's also a reality there. So that's why we are a little bit cautious where we go. But of course, a lot of science has to proceed, and we need all these big minds to get them together, preferably in the Netherlands, and to get for the advantage of humankind. So that was a little bit my contribution. Yeah, the security issues are there.
Thank you. Maybe also a request for the colleagues from NWO present here in regard to your question, Paul, because Jacomijn, maybe you or Monica, but I think Jacomijn, we are celebrating today over 20 years of collaboration in astronomy, but I think we have more to celebrate. So if you go to the booth of the Netherlands upstairs, then there's these booklets about what we can celebrate in multiple topics and themes where we do research together. And something new started this year, and maybe Jacomijn, you can reflect on it, because it is not only bilateral, our collaboration, isn't it?
Indeed. Let me just stand. I'm Jacomijn Soutvelle from the Dutch Research Council, NWO. Nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Berto. What we've been doing the past few years is a focus on the water, energy, and food nexus. Connecting those three sectors and how they influence each other. So, for example, if there's a water shortage, that it affects food security. This year, we actually launched a call not only with South Africa, but with 8 other African Science Councils. And we're very excited about that. Here are the results from the first call from South Africa and the Netherlands. And now we're expanding to 8 other countries. I think what's really important about this, I'm sorry, I'm a bit nervous. I don't know why.
Because I put you on the spot out of nothing.
Maybe that's it, yeah.
But it's okay.
And I arrived like at 1 last night. Okay, so let me just take a breath. Thanks. So what's really important here is that the researchers came to us from the first, second, and third call, and they asked us, can we please expand this collaboration and not only have it between the Netherlands and South Africa? And we listened to it and we said, yes, of course. And we discussed it with NRF. And NRF said, let's introduce you to the other African Science Granting Councils through the SGCI, the Science Granting Councils Initiative. And they pitched it there. We expected about 3 to 4 councils to be interested, and many more were interested. And we're very happy about this. And I hope that's going to be very successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacomijn. I think there's lots more to say, and Jacomijn can tell more about the research calls that are now extended to other African researchers, research councils over the African continent. We have the great astronomers here, but I will not leave you, of course, by providing you with the last round of remarks.
Well, no, actually, I wanted to ask the question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I think very good initiative. So, in the research calls that you're going to be making, are you also going to consider including astronomy? We can do with more money. Although, people to think we are already well funded, but we can do with much more, yeah.
And to add to that, there's a lot of spin-offs coming out of astronomy. So.
Yes.
The focus of the collaboration with the other science granting councils in Africa will be on the water, energy, food nexus. And then with sub-themes like the just energy transition or climate adaptation. With regards to specifically astronomy, together with Saskia actually, we're looking at maybe other instruments that we can use in NWO that might be interesting. And of course, we are in conversation with our NRF colleagues as well, what is possible. The new policy of NWO on international collaborations is really focusing on global transitions, and then specifically in water, food, so that fits really nicely with the other partnership I think that we have, energy, and also in mobility. So I don't really see links there with astronomy, but we are trying to see whether there's other opportunities as well. Luckily, there are many instruments, but yeah, we are on it.
Yeah, go ahead. Hi, I'm Monica Brasa. I'm a colleague of Jaco Mines. You were saying you're always looking for more money, but I think we're talking a different order of budget for those more social science-oriented research. That is not the kind of money you're looking for, I think.
And you are more than welcome at the booth, of course, for this conversation.
Yeah, but I think if you look at, let's say, digital skills, for instance, which I think could be maybe another area in future you can look at, and I think that's where astronomy also we try to get into that space as well, because I think we are already doing a lot in terms of contributing to that, even if it's small amounts of money. So it's not always the capital. I mean, if you remove the capital expenditure for the telescopes, we can also handle small grants.
Yeah, we're happy to continue this discussion,
Yeah,
I think, on the specificities of the program and how that might fit into what you're doing. I think that could be an interesting conversation, but maybe not for the whole room.
I see the debate is on. That's nice. Last question to the audience. Is there any question or remark? If not, I go to the final reflections from our panelists. Maybe a nice question to end with. We've heard a lot about the history. How did we start on both sides? How did we found each other as partners? How did we grow the collaboration bilateral? And how fast we can go as bilateral partners? But we also found our way into multilateral partnerships within the SCA, for example. So a question to all of you: what is it that you take for today, from today, in your role? What will it do for the future? And how do you reflect for all of us on the bilateral partnership? Just an easy question. Can I start on this side?
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I see a very promising future for the Netherlands, South Africa, partnership going, because I think there is mutual respect. Actually, I find my colleagues from Netherlands being very friendly. Actually, I mean, I enjoy visiting Netherlands, and the kind of cordial relationship that I have, with my Dutch colleagues, is actually one of the best. So I think that already shows that I think there's a lot we can do, even in astrotourism, maybe linking that Topishoek to SARAO as well, as a sort of a part of our astrotourism routes, and because they are close to each other and things like that. Yeah, so yeah, I think if we just maybe renew that MOU for the exchange program going forward, we work towards that so that we can have we can formalize the relationship again and bring in everybody, all these aspects into the MOU. I know there's still some discussions within the Netherlands, but I think that is what I would like to take as a way forward, that if we can renew that formal partnership and bring in all the relevant instruments, maybe to take this partnership to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I cannot promise anything, but we have an Africa strategy. And an ambassador doesn't do it. But I know that for us right now, being indeed partners, that we really, with the Africa strategy that we have, that we really listen. Okay, we can think that we can do things here, but we have to listen what Africa and what South Africa wants and where they see a role for us, where we can partner. And preferably we bring other partners as well. But it's a process. If the MOUs, yes, we can extend or whatever, we can widen the scope. But I think what I learned today, I mean, that's what Beto asked today. I mean, there's something that I discussed with Dan. So let's do something on the science forum. And here we are. So I think a lot is also about indeed people-to-people connection to make that work and to have these kind of events and then take it forward, hear your suggestions and follow that up. So I'm looking forward to that. And thanks again also for you organizing this. But also, yeah, Dan is out of the room, but I think he's a big inspiration to many of us. And I hope to continue that cooperation with South Africa. Thank you.
I think for me, this morning has been a good reminder of the length of the history, going back to one of the early directors of the South African Astronomical Observatory. It wasn't called that in the past, but that link has really been there a very long time. And for me, I'm going to look at how we can really use the OAD, the Office of Astronomy for Development, the African Astronomical Society, the NAS program, and see how those very important programs that we run that also connect us with the rest of Africa can be linked to the Netherlands and taken further, particularly for student training, but also to enable the exciting science coming up in the future, which is really multi-wavelength.
I'm sorry I missed the first part of the session, but I think that, we've been engaging quite a lot with the Netherlands. We actually have been talking to Astron about potentially working in similar areas. We have a few similarities in the sense that we are both hosting international projects on our side. So just discussing managing the operational side and how to work with all the partners constructively is quite fun. But I do agree with Takalani that around, data science. I think it's really a very interesting area. Also for modeling of water energy systems, there's I guess that's the angle that I'm kind of trying to wedge in there. But yeah, I mean, I think that the opportunity to do more really does exist, and I think we can find creative ways of making it work. On one side, one of the things we were discussing with Netherlands is, we have lots of young, inexperienced science graduates here. Maybe you have a few well-experienced, about to retire science people that can help with commissioning and would love to come enjoy the summer in Cape Town. So that's really a very easy a win-win position that I think will also, try help expand some of these capabilities beyond just MeerKAT itself, but the work we do at SARAO and some of the work we do at Ghana and the other African countries.
Beto, your question is a tricky one because I'm paid to be neutral. So,
but people don't know.
People don't know. Yeah, well, that's billing. There's a camera on me, so I'm not sure. So let me say that one of the initiatives that we are working on is finding new members for the organization, and one of the focus regions in the world is the African continent. So what we're trying to do is speak to member states, and of course South Africa and the Netherlands are a member, to look at initiatives and schemes and programs that are already in place that enhance the bilateral collaboration, and maybe connect our expertise to it, and look for possibilities to build human capital across the African continent. So that's definitely something that I will follow up with our colleagues at WO and the ministry. So yeah, let me mention that one.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of this segment of the event this morning, session 2 with the panelists. Thank you very much for your contributions, your role. Also the panelists in the room, thank you very much for your answers and questions. It's now time to hand over to our almost last speaker, because I sneak in myself behind you, if that's okay. But the next speaker is, and you can take a seat if you like in the meanwhile. But our next speaker is Annelien Morgan. She is working, yeah, you can take your seat. That would be helpful, I think. Annelien works for the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology here in South Africa, and she is actually in charge of all the countries except a few, but it's too many to mention them all. But I know that it's a lot because it's hard to get track of you, but I'm always happy to see you. And today is such a day where we see each other quite a lot. And it's for you the difficult task to do some closing remarks.
Thanks, Berto. Thank you, Berto. Thank you very much. I think let's give him a round of applause. He did a great job moderating the panel, but also making it very, gave us a lot of humor in that as he was facilitating the panel. So thank you very much. So as Berto said, my name is Annalene Morgan. I'm from the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. So we are co-hosting this session with the embassy. So let me acknowledge Her Excellency, the Ambassador, Joanne. Thank you very much for the cooperation that we have with the embassy and all the distinguished delegates who are here. I would also like to recognize the team who are here from the Netherlands who are visiting and attending the Science Forum. Welcome to South Africa, and thank you very much for coming so that we could celebrate this 20 years of cooperation in astronomy. I'd also like to acknowledge within the audience, we've invited one of our partners because they're also here on a visit this week as part of the bilateral cooperation with South Africa, as Berto said. In my portfolio at the department, I'm the Chief Director for Overseas Bilateral Cooperation. So I oversee all the engagements with Europe, Middle East, Asia, Americas, and BRICS. So that's my portfolio that I oversee. So everything besides Africa that I oversee within the department. So in that regard, we've got a professor here from Bulgaria who heads their Astronomy Institute in Bulgaria. Prof, maybe you could stand. So we invited that she participates because it was important that we also make the connections within this with the experts. So I think we're very happy with the session. I think it went very well. Thanks to Aletta who chaired the morning session with the presentations that we received. And I think taking from what TK said in the panel, that we enjoy very strong relations with the Netherlands at the bilateral level. Ambassador, as you would know, early this year, Berto and the team hosted us at the embassy in February, where I was there with Mr. Dan de Toit for the joint committee meeting. We had a very successful joint committee meeting to review the bilateral cooperation, but also take stock of where we are and what new programs and priorities we can collaborate in. On that note, that's where we come in, TK and Ponzo, in terms of the opportunities that you think we should be pursuing with the Netherlands in terms of the joint calls, because we are responsible for the joint calls between ourselves and the Netherlands, and obviously for on the South African side, the NRF, the National Research Foundation, is our implementing agency. So definitely we can discuss with them to see within the calls that we have, could we have a call that could focus on some of the areas that was mentioned here. So I did take notes, and we've listened to that, because I believe that any funding instrument should be flexible enough for us to be innovative, to see how can we support particular joint activity between the countries if that area is not funded in the current funding instruments. I think this morning we heard, this morning and especially this afternoon, the importance of knowledge and scientific exchange. And I think that came across out in the discussions and the ecosystems that have been created over the years, over the past 20 years or so between the countries. And within that is the issues of mobility, human capital development, and skills development. And I think we've seen this evident within this cooperation with the Netherlands, but also contributing to research infrastructure development, taking the case of the Square Kilometre Array, where we collaborate in. And I think a large part of the discussion also focused on our partnerships, the importance of partnerships and the partnerships models, whether these be bilateral models or multilateral models. And nowadays there are many types of models. You find trilateral models. We could explore, for example, a trilateral between South Africa, the Netherlands and Bulgaria, or South Africa, the Netherlands and Namibia. So those trilateral partnerships can be explored, and they are possible that we can. And you also find polylateral partnerships, partnerships that can be organized with a number of countries on common interest areas. But coming back to multilateralism, multilateralism is important because you get a bigger voice, a collective voice. But multilateralism is not possible without bilateral connection, because the connection starts at a bilateral level. And once you have a strong bilateral, you are able to jointly influence the multilateral voices that you gather in. Prior to coming back into the country, I spent 9 years in Botswana, in Gaborone, working at the SADC Secretariat up until January this year. So as you know, SADC is a multilateral organization. And one of the key features in the SADC Treaty is the issue of variable geometry. And basically what that means is that, yes, we are together in a multilateral partnership, but we recognize that there are those that will take time, but let those that are going ahead not be left to be much slower by those who are not able to pull. So I think within a multilateral setup, it's important to recognize that those who are ready to move fast, let them move fast, but also recognize that those are still coming along at their own pace. And I think that's important that we also recognize that. I think the issue of funding I touched on earlier. It's important that we reflect and look at the different instruments that we can then look at in supporting the partnership. Earlier, in fact, on Monday, one of the sessions we convened on Monday, Ambassador, was a session on science diplomacy. We had a masterclass on science diplomacy where our former DG Mjwara was the keynote speaker. And one of the things that came out of the masterclass on Monday was the issue of using science diplomacy as a soft power to bridge the geopolitics. So just touching on what the examples that TK spoke about, I think science is important, and science is that soft power to bridge the geopolitics. And I think that's the importance that we always need to recognize. So in closing, I'd like to thank everybody for your participation, especially the presenters, the speakers, but also the organizing team, Berto, who shared the concept note with us, as Ambassador said, and came up to say, why don't we collaborate? In fact, we discussed it during the joint committee in February to say we should have the celebration, and we kickstarted on a concept note which was going back and forth, and eventually engaging TK in a letter, and they were very supportive, and things started coming together. But most importantly, I would like to also acknowledge Miranda. Please stand, Miranda, who was very key in putting this together. Please stand. Yeah, so she was very keen in putting this together with Berto. They had a number of meetings at the embassy with Aleta, organizing the speakers and everything, and Kagiso also. I'm not sure if Kagiso is in the room, but also Kagiso who contributed, and Audrey, who are part of TK's team. So I thought it's very important that I acknowledge that team. They did very well in putting this together, and we congratulate them, and let's give them a round of applause. With those few words, thank you very much, and to all of you, enjoy the rest of the Science Forum. Just to remind you, this afternoon we have a keynote speaker by our former Foreign Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor. She'll be giving us a speech this afternoon at 3 o'clock, so please don't miss out. And if you have received the email from the Science Forum organizing team, please respond, because they are sending emails to those who have registered just to confirm that you will attend the session. As you saw yesterday, the auditorium was quite full. There was no sitting space, so it's important that you maybe confirm your participation. So thank you. I think Berto has some few gifts to give for our speakers. And then we'd also like the speakers and the presenters to please not leave, because afterwards we'll do a group photo with the ambassador. Thank you very much. Yeah, over to you, Berto.
Thank you very much for those fine and warm words, Anneline, and I think you summarized it very, very well. A few last words from my side. I'm not going to repeat a lot, but some of the elements I will repeat. So a big thank you to the colleagues from the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, Dan Toy, together with my ambassador, to instigate this initiative and event. Anneline, Aleta, Audrey, Miranda, Kagiso, thank you very much for working together on your side. On my side, Megan, Ashna, Closil, and Jessica, thank you very much for all the work that you've done. And also Jeroen Arts and Judith Vermeer in The Hague at the Ministry of Education, Culture and Science. Thank you very much for all the work done. And for all the speakers and the panelists, we have a small thank you for you. And this is something I wanted to share with you because we created a bilateral sign, a token of our appreciation for each other. So it's a Dutch tulip and a South African protea. We do look different, we appear in a different way, but we in the end come all from the same stem. So it's all about growing together, realizing that we are in different places and environments, context, but in the end we flower the best if we do it together. So let's keep that as a good reminder. And the book is made in Victoria Yards, Johannesburg, in one of the poorest neighborhoods there. It's a Square print, it's handmade, and the benefits of the booklets go to local manufacturers, and the profits they make go to providing food for the elderly in the neighborhood. So also that is a token of the way we like to do things with huge impact and sustainable relations. So thank you very much for all the speakers and panelists again. Please collect your bags, but make a picture first with us.